across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6 and I am Mike Graham at the home of common sense. Can you imagine, again, yesterday we said this, waking up in Downing Street as Keir Starmer. Imagine if you had been reincarnated as the new Prime Minister of this country. He's only been in like 14 and a half months, but he wakes up every morning now and is like this. Let's show me the papers. Don't show me the papers. We've got any emails that I should see because, you know, last time you didn't show me the emails. Look at the trouble I got into. But, yeah, he's running around hiding from people, ducking and diving in and out of offices, you know, down the stairs. Here's somebody coming down the stairs. He rushes into the toilet so nobody can see him. Front pages are completely and utterly covered with stories of crisis. Crisis of Prime Minister grows as aide quits over lewd remarks about Diane Abbott. That's The Guardian. The Daily Mail has got a story that says just meltdown. Starmer's socialist utopia is in real trouble. Key number 10 aide quits over vile slur about Diane Abbott. Prime Minister admits he did know about Mandelson Epstein emails. Party unrest mounts as MPs say he'll be out by May. Incredible. Front page, I mean, this is even worse for him. Front page of the Telegraph, Trump says he's going to go easy on him, battled Starmer because he feels a bit sorry for him. So he's not even going to give him a hard time. Starmer fights for his future as Mandelson row deepens and key aide resigns. It really is quite remarkable, quite ridiculous. Chloe Dobbs is here. Chloe, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Good to see you. Mandelson emails add to pressure on Starmer, front page of the Times. And, of course, the only other story that he had any control over is the one about sending people back to France, as we were told by Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary, that the flights back to France would begin yesterday on Air France. They were going to load up a load of migrants who had been here having been detained since the beginning of August, and they were all going to get on a plane and be escorted by other people so that they didn't do anything nasty like run away, and then they were going to end up back in France where they would be exchanged for some more migrants who would come back the other way. Unfortunately, it didn't quite turn out like that because there was one guy who was apparently earmarked to go on one flight yesterday, but even that wasn't possible because he was pulled off the plane at the last minute because of a legal challenge. So that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. We are absolutely nowhere up the creek without a paddle. Keir Starmer is going to be under more pressure today because there's a hearing going on, or a debate going on in the centre of Parliament, House of Commons, and we're going to see if we can get him to turn up and try and justify himself because he is very, very deep in the dark stuff, it has to be said. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. It's the home of common sense. Let's get it on. 6. Chloe Dobbs, very good morning to you. You can't take a day off in this business anymore because, you know, take a couple of days off at the weekend and suddenly everything spirals out of control.
I know, every time I think, I'm going to have a relaxed day, I see the news and it's like, oh gosh, it just doesn't stop popping up. I mean, with the Labour Party, I don't think they can go a single day without a new scandal coming out. It's just endless. I mean, we've had just in the, you know, short term, we've had Rayner, then Mandelson, and then we find out some other guy has had to quit yesterday, an aide over some dodgy messages he sent about Diane Abbott back in 2020. It just never ends with them. And really then, as you say, the story about the flight not being able to take off, and they only were trying to send one guy. We were told it was going to be 50 a week going, and they told us, what, at the beginning of August, that it was all starting this week
August
and they'll be gone soon. And I knew that the details of it said that France has 14 days to decide if they approve someone or one. And then I thought, I'll give them 2 weeks. I'll give them a chance. 2 weeks went, another 2 weeks went, nothing. Then first day of Parliament, Yvette Cooper comes in and says, we will send some back by the end of September. And I'm thinking, that's a bit weak. But then the following day, she was like, actually, I'm not sure we'll even do it by the end of September. And
well, that was the line, wasn't it, from Starmer? If you come to this country illegally, you will be detained and deported. And it was at the earliest opportunity, which could be about 3 months away. But they made a big thing of it over the weekend because this was the week it was going to start. And I'd said to Christian, my producer, yesterday, I said, I'm sure they won't be sending anyone today, will they? And, of course, they had one guy, one hapless character who was going to be led onto a plane. It's not very clear if he actually even made it onto the plane, whether he was just in the departure lounge and got his duty-free sorted, and then suddenly was told, oh, we can't take you now because there's been a legal challenge.
All over just trying to send one individual. Apparently they're going to try and put him on another plane today. But what's happening is you've got all of these charities and lawyers who are teaming up to send loads of emails and make loads of phone calls to Air France to say, don't take these migrants on your planes, it's evil, it's inhuman, you know, making them go to that horrible country called France. How dare the United Kingdom.
Horses.
So Air France are probably thinking this is more flack than it's worth to take a few individuals on our flights. Well, it's the
same old story, isn't it? It's the same old story that afflicted the Tories when they tried to do it. There's lawyers popping up out of nowhere. They're ringing people in Strasbourg at sort of midnight to make sure that you know, he gets taken out of a restaurant, some judge to give his verdict. I mean, it says here the Home Office says they have to give generous time extensions to the migrants to take legal advice on challenging their deportation as a result of a ruling against the Tory government's thwarted Rwanda deportation scheme. So the legal process actually is going to take a lot longer than everybody thought. Well,
I mean, especially with all the backlogs that we have in the courts.
Well, it's not going to take any longer than I thought.
I'm sure they'll be here for a few more years in a hotel before we even think about sending them back. And I knew this was going to happen when this policy was announced. I was like, I know this is too good to be true, that they're just going to detain a bunch of migrants and a week or two later they're going to be on a plane to France. It's not going to happen. But then we were told...
So the whole idea is ridiculous because it's not deporting anyone. They're deporting one person and bringing another person in. So the numbers are actually still going up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the idea is someone thinking of making a crossing from France is going to think, oh, there's a chance I might be sent back this way and I'll never be able to claim asylum in Britain again, so it's not worth the risk. But when it's only 50 a week, I'm sorry, but I don't think that is as good enough of a deterrent. It's not
because there's, as I say, since they announced this was happening, since they started detaining people, August the 6th, 5,600 have come, and they're talking about getting rid of one guy.
Yeah, I mean, what they say is, oh, we're just starting with 50 a week, but that's just a trial run before we ramp it up and it will be loads of people. But I highly doubt they will ever even get close to even 50 a week, because they can't even send one person.
It says here, the French authorities said they had been told to expect fewer than 10 people per flight and no more than 2 or 3 on the first passenger jet flown out of the UK. It is understood the French would have preferred larger numbers on a smaller number of flights.
It was an absolute
shambles.
The one policy that they had where it looked like they were going to do not much, but a small little something to create a little deterrent to stop the boats. They can't even get that off the ground, let alone anything meaningful to stop the boats coming across. So, I mean, it's clear as day now that there is absolutely no chance under a Labour government that the boat crossings are going to go down.
There are 2 reasons why. One, because it would appear that they can challenge under their right to a family life under Article 8 of the European Convention of Human Rights. But even worse than that, they can also claim that they've been trafficked or are suffering from mental ill health. So they can all say that, can't they?
Yeah, I knew this was going to happen, but then there was this disparity between what the French were saying and the Brits were saying, because we had, when people started to ask the question, oh, surely people are going to make these legal claims, we had Elise and Andy come out and say, oh, no, it's OK, we can send them to France first, and then we can deal with their legal claim after. But then the terms of the deal with the French said we won't take anybody until they have no outstanding legal claims. So that didn't add up, and then there was, no one knows exactly where, apparently this guy was still not, this one individual, we're not entirely sure where exactly he's going to be staying, if he's going to be able to leave and come back to the accommodation. It's just been a total mess over this one little policy that isn't really that much of a deterrent. It should be not that difficult to swap 50 people a week, but seems it is.
It's very difficult for Labour to do anything at the moment because they're so busy being mired in scandal. I mean, Dan Hodges, our friend here from our show, where we sort of made him into a Starmer hater when he started off being quite a supporter, he basically says, this proves what ministers have told me all week, Downing Street is falling apart. Prime Minister's authority is completely collapsing. And this is on the subject of this guy, Paul Obenden. But Starmer actually was so panicky yesterday, he decided to go out and actually give an interview to Channel 4 News and also to other kind of selected outlets. Not to us, of course, but we've got it. Have a look at this.
Obviously, the post, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post. And Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team went through a process. And therefore, I knew of his association with Epstein, but had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
If I'd known then what I know now. Well, what he knew then was that he had a friendship with a convicted paedophile.
Yeah.
And so apparently that was okay. That's not a problem. You can be the American ambassador for the UK as long as you regret it. And you're sorry that you were friends with a paedophile that went to prison for child sex offences and for trying to procure a child for prostitution purposes. That's fine, okay? He doesn't mind that. So he's now saying that because he wasn't shown a couple of emails that make it look worse than he thought it was, he wouldn't have appointed him. It makes no sense, does it?
No, I mean, Keir Starmer from the start has, and all of the people surrounding him in number 10, it would seem, have just been completely off the mark with recognising what is going to blow up into a scandal and what isn't. I mean, every day they seem to do something stupid. And with Peter Mandelson, what they clearly did is they appointed him knowing that he had strong links with Epstein, knowing that he was friends with him, not just before, but after the man was convicted. I know there are a load of people that were associated with him, but you can possibly give them benefit of the doubt if it was before they knew what this guy was up to, right? But after he's been convicted, absolutely no excuse.
Mandelson stayed in his house in New York when he was in prison.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to stay in a guy's house and he's in prison, you think you might ask what he's in prison for.
Yeah, and did business deals with him after he was convicted. But what Starmer thought when he appointed him was, oh, it's worth the risk of a possible story because we're really nervous about our relationship with Trump and we just want to get a guy that's experienced in. How dumb do you have to be to not recognise that that is going to blow up into a big story?
The other way to look at it, which I think is slightly more likely to be the case, only because of the influence that he has, is the whole Blair project, which is still kind of hanging around like a bad smell, would have been pushing for Mandelson. McSweeney was pushing for Mandelson because he used to work with him when he was in the Blair government. You know, the Blair people, including Tony Blair, would have been pushing for him. And that's, I think, the problem, because Starmer is so weak that he just kind of goes along with whatever anybody tells him. Let's have a look at his next bit, right? This is when he talks about the timeline of what number 10 knew.
It was only on Wednesday early evening that I knew the contents of the Bloomberg emails. It was only very late on Wednesday when Peter Mandelson replied to the questions that had been put to him by government officials. And it was on that basis that I took my decision that he should be removed. What I knew before PMQs was that there had been media inquiries. I didn't know the content of the Bloomberg emails. And I knew that questions had been put to Peter that he had not yet answered. And he hadn't answered them by the time it got to PMQs. There is, of course, a time lag in America, but I knew that there are questions that have been put to him, but I didn't know what answers he was going to give to those questions. That came later on Wednesday. And that's why, at that point, I gave the answer I did at PMQs, and that's the extent of what I knew at the time.
So he's now blaming the time difference between London and Washington. You know, but they're 5 hours behind. So, I mean, I didn't have any answers. He's the Prime Minister. You get the guy out of bed. You go, look, answer this right now, because I'm going to go...
He has to clock off at 6 p.m, Mike. We know that, don't we?
Yes, but he's talking about Wednesday at PMQs. So don't forget, Wednesday he got up at midday and he was asked by Kemi Badenoch, you know, do you have full confidence in the ambassador? And he said he had full confidence in him. It wasn't just, well, actually, we're waiting for him to answer some questions, or actually, we're investigating what he may have known that he hasn't told us about. No. This was, we have full confidence in Peter Mandelson.
I mean, it was just absolutely...
Hopeless.
Yeah, completely hopeless. So dumb of him to stand there at PMQs and say that he's got full confidence in the guy, when he didn't have to say one way or the other. He could have just sat in the middle and said, we're waiting for him to answer some questions, we're waiting to see some more information. If you're waiting on emails, don't say you've got full confidence in him. Say you're going to wait. And also...
why hasn't he seen the Bloomberg stuff? Again, he's the Prime Minister. You know, you just have to make a phone call and go, I need to see this stuff, please.
I know, exactly. So, I mean, there's no way that he can twist it and change the timelines to make him look good. He looks bad either way. And the thing is, regardless of the timelines of the emails and whatnot, you had, just before PMQs, Peter Mandelson go and do that interview with Harry Cole, where he said there'll be more stuff to come out. So, I mean, what more evidence do you need that it's not a good idea to stand at PMQs, get completely roasted by Kemi Badenoch, and say you've got full confidence in that guy? How did you not think that was going to come back to bite you?
Because Harry Cole was in here with us yesterday, because he's back in London right now this week because of the Trump visit, and he said, you know, it was very funny that night because they were waiting for Mandelson to arrive in the studio. It was one of those where you don't know if he's going to turn up, because he was clearly going round and round outside in a car, waiting to see how bad the papers were in Britain before he decided whether to come in and do the interview. So Mandelson knew he was in trouble. You know, and if you haven't got a conversation that you can have with the ambassador to the United States as the Prime Minister, if you can't personally pick up the phone and go, look, Peter, what's going on? and you're leaving it all to aides and, you know, ethics managers and all the rest of it. That's part of his problem. He's not hands-on. He doesn't know how to do anything.
I mean, look,
surely, I mean, you know, if I was working with somebody like that, and you've been in situations where you've got a boss, you know, whether it's Piers Morgan, whether it's, you know, some high-flying editor type, you know, and you're in trouble in some way, they ring you up and they ask you directly. They don't go through intermediaries. They just go, what's going on?
I mean,
I've got to do PMQs tomorrow. You better tell me the truth.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was watching PMQs waiting for what he was going to say about Peter Mandelson. Kemi Badenoch was all ready to go for him for it. He should have thought through what he was going to say. I mean, did nobody advise him
he just
that it would be
a full confidence in the ambassador?
It was an absolute car crash, and it has been so clear over the past year that Keir Starmer, in almost every single aspect, is completely out of his depth. Not just on policy, but on comms and just common sense, reading the room.
Right. Are we still in phase 2, by the way, or is that gone now? I mean, I was wondering if they're in phase 3 yet.
Do you know, I got sent a picture this morning of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is the picture
This is the one with the taking the knee, isn't it?
Yes, taking the knee. The second one, Angela Rayner, has gone, and then phase 3, none of them are in the picture anymore.
Exactly, right. This is Starmer on why the material that he says was not presented to him wasn't presented to him.
You say not everybody had seen every email, but people at the top of the Foreign Office were in possession of some of the very material which you say was so unacceptable.
Well, look, in retrospect, it would have been better if I had been shown the details of the material before PMQs. Nonetheless...
The bits that were in Whitehall already.
Well, in retrospect...
Why weren't you?
It would have been better if I had seen that
You must have wondered
material.
this.
Well, the team were busy trying to get answers out of Peter Mandelson, which they hadn't got answers
And you're sure
to.
they weren't just working, as it were, for Peter Mandelson, trying to protect his reputation a bit when they should have been protecting yours?
No. I've seen the questions that government officials put to Peter Mandelson. I've seen the response he gave to those.
You think he was obfuscating?
Well, what I'd just say about those questions, they were the right questions, in my view, and they were waiting for Peter to reply. So they didn't know what his reply was going to be any more than I did. But look, if you're asking me now, you know, days on, would it be better if more of this material had been brought expressly to my attention? Then yes, it would have been.
I mean, it's only wonder they can't get anything done in this government. I mean, you might as well send a guy on horseback, you know.
Yeah, he just babbles on. I mean, that is what we call a word salad there.
A couple of carrier pigeons over to Washington, D.C. Peter hasn't got the carrier pigeons yet, so we don't know what his answer is. I mean, it's ludicrous. Pick the bloody phone up and ring him.
I know. I mean, there's just no excuse for it whatsoever.
No.
And the other thing they've done with this, handling it absolutely atrociously, is they decided the guy that they would send out on the media rounds to defend the decision to have Peter Mandelson was Peter Kyle.
Yeah.
So you've got Peter.
He didn't know anything.
You've got Peter. Well, he doesn't know anything. But ironically, you've got him defending a guy who had links to a prolific paedophile, whilst he is also the guy who decided to say that Nigel Farage is, you know, cozying up to paedophiles like Jimmy Savile for simply criticising the online safety bill. So he's been on his moral high horse talking about how evil paedophiles are previously, and then he's out defending a guy who's mates with him on Sunday. I mean, couldn't you have picked somebody else to go and do those media rounds?
Yeah, to go back to Keir, well, as Dan Hodges says, clearly, you know, Downing Street is literally falling apart. It's in meltdown. There's nobody running it. Nobody's running anything.
All these interviews.
Nobody knows what to do. I mean, this guy who's had to resign, Ovenden, is one of the guys who's closest to Morgan McSweeney and one of the key aides in Downing Street, and he's had to go because of his embarrassment about Diane Abbott, which is pretty awful. I mean, it's years ago, it doesn't really matter. But this is the trouble with these characters. You know, these you know, sort of political apparatchiks. They're all a bit odd. You know, and they have, you know, all sorts of WhatsApp jokes with each other all the time, most of which are pretty unpalatable, and I don't really care about that. But you can't be doing that in government. You just can't get away with it, can you?
I mean, if you are in government and you send a WhatsApp, if you're a politician, you send a WhatsApp, you need to send that knowing there is always a chance it's going to be screenshotted. But these people just don't seem to have the common sense to know that, and they'll put something stupid on WhatsApp that can then, you know, lead to them having to resign. I mean, it seems like, I know these messages were from back in 2020, but it really seems like the people around Starmer, they do the most idiotic things and somehow think that it won't blow up in a big story. Whether they've... and Keir Starmer, he'll come out and say, oh no, we have got loads of integrity because all of these people that have had to resign, we've acted really quickly to make sure they resign.
Because that's his definition of integrity.
I know, and I'm like... But Keir Starmer, have you seen how many of them have had to go? I mean, you had Louise Haigh for the whole phone disaster first. Then you had...
We had Sue Gray before that.
You had... Oh, I can't even. There are so many scandals, I forget.
Yeah.
And then you had, the Minister for Corruption having to leave because she's being investigated for corruption. Then you've got the Homelessness Minister having to leave because she evicts her own tenants.
Dead. So he said that was the guy Gwynn who thought it was a good idea to tweet out that basically pensioners, if they die, we won't have to spend so much money on them on the NHS. It's all good.
And then I mean, Angela Rayner, did she not think that buying this new pad, a third home, when you're the housing minister in a department that's cracking down on evil second homeowners, do you not think that might just be a bad look? I mean, where is the common sense with these people?
They haven't got any.
From a comms perspective, a PR perspective, it's been an absolute car crash from day one.
This is how you can tell they've never done anything in the real world, because they don't know how the real world works. Here's Ed Miliband. He was on Peston last night defending Mandelson.
I don't know, you seem to, but I don't know exactly what was gone through in that vetting process. What I do know is that Keir, as he said today, had no idea about the scale and extent of the relationship revealed in these emails, or about the way in which Peter Mandelson was defending Jeffrey Epstein to Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction. That's why he rightly, as I say, said today he wouldn't have appointed him in the first place.
Yeah, there's this kind of equivocation. No idea, Keir. Did he just call him that? It sounded like it. He said Keir had no idea.
Almost. I mean, it sounded like it was all rhyming and getting confusing. I mean,
I think we should just clip that. Keir had no idea. Just keep playing it.
I mean, it's sending me to sleep, to be honest. Him and Keir Starmer just going on air, babbling, trying to explain themselves when there is no way out of this.
There's nothing to explain, right?
There's no way out of
Peter
this.
Mandelson,
They clearly, whatever the timeline is, whatever exactly how it adds up, they look terrible either way.
Exactly. Peter Mandelson was friends, best pals even, with a convicted paedophile. That's all you need to know. Therefore, he should never have been appointed.
No.
Not he should have been appointed because he said he regretted it and that he was sorry he'd ever met him, which is what he started to say, because now it's going to come out. Apparently there's even more stuff coming out in the next 24 hours, which could finish Starmer off.
It could potentially. I'm not entirely sure. There's been a lot of talk about whether someone like Andy Burnham is going to come in and take his place.
I don't think Andy Burnham's got it either. You know,
but the thing is,
who died and made him boss, as they say. You know, what makes him so great?
If Andy Burnham decides to go for it, this could actually be a huge win for Reform, because if he vacates his mayoralty in Greater Manchester, Reform are on track to win that, so they might take that off his hands. Yeah. And then, if he gets an MP to resign so that he can come into a by-election, there's also a good chance, because he'll have to go for somewhere in the Manchester area, that Reform could win it as well. And we know history shows that it is really rare for an incumbent government to win a by-election. Right. People tend to rebel in by-elections against the government.
Well, so especially if the government's this useless.
Exactly. I mean, you could end up with Andy Burnham decides to leave the mayoralty in Manchester to try and go for party leader, and as a consequence, he ends up with no seat or no mayoralty whatsoever, and Reform win a mayoralty and a seat, which would be an absolute disaster. So I think Keir Starmer, as embarrassing as this is, and I'm sure we're going to see far more interviews of him umming and ahhing and making a fool of himself, I'm not sure he's going to go, because I don't think there is a clear successor. They've got rid of Angela Rayner now, so she's not going to take over the reins. If she was still here, then it might have been another story. But there's just no talent in the Labour Party to take over any role. I mean, not just for Keir Starmer.
It doesn't mean that it won't happen, though, because you've got another story in the Mail here today talking about how they're all lining up. Ousted ministers seek revenge. And these are the people trying to become Deputy Prime Minister, right? Or Deputy Leader, I should say. Justin Madders, who's Angela Rayner's enforcer for the Workers' Rights Bill before being axed by Sir Keir Starmer this month, is chairing Lucy Powell's bid. So they're all lining up, with their knives out to stab him in the back. And I don't think they care whether there's a successor. They just want to get rid of him because he's, one, so useless, and two, he's got so many enemies. He literally can't survive.
I mean, he might go, but I would point back to Theresa May, who from 2017 her reputation was absolutely toast, but because there wasn't a clear successor, she managed to hang on for 2 more years. So I just don't see any clear other talent to come through. I mean, there's been some talk about people like West Streeting, but I'm not sure that he's going to really appeal.
Down the plug hole, though, isn't he?
I mean, what would be absolutely hilarious is if we end up with Ed Miliband as party leader, because apparently amongst the Labour members, he's super popular.
Well, then they'll kill them off altogether. That will completely
Exactly. I mean, I kind of hope that happens, because not only will it be absolutely hilarious, but that will really finish them off and hand Reform a huge majority whenever there is an election.
It's hard to see somebody being more useless than Keir Starmer, to be honest. Jules in London says, Good morning, Mike and Chloe. Fair to say, if they knew then what they know now, most, if not all, voters wouldn't have opted for useless Starmer. I think that's right. It's 27 minutes past 6. We've got loads to do. By the way, we've got another good Ed Miliband story. It turns out his second home council tax payments have all been made by us. He doesn't bother paying it. He puts it to the taxpayers to pay it. It's nice, isn't it? Several £1,000s. It's 27 minutes past 6.
I never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. We, as you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:31. I'm Mike Graham. This from Tony. It says Paul Ovenden, Starmer's Director of Strategy, have posted awful explicit photos and racial slurs against Diane Abbott. What the hell is going on in number 10 Downing Street? Well, you do wonder what they're doing sitting around all day. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, is still desperately trying to make out that he's got some very important things going on, including a nuclear deal. This is with the United States of America. He's hoping this might rescue him from the state of his hapless government. Basically, Trump arrives today, and they've done some deal with him to build nuclear power plants, small nuclear power plants up and down the country. I think he tweeted this.
Government that works with other governments across the globe, capable of getting the investment in that we need in this country, and is working with the private sector to deliver.
Do you think they've got somebody who selects the music for these videos? It's awful, isn't it?
Some dodgy intern who doesn't know
really
what
bad.
they are doing.
Right. It's just dreadful music. I mean, maybe they go down that road where they have to look for, copyright-free music.
Yeah,
which they have to pay any money for.
I mean, it sounds like some sort of sexy beach bar music, not really the kind of music I put on a video about
nuclear power.
No, it just seems very odd.
5, 4. I mean, it is just bizarre. And here he's talking about reform, because he's a bit obsessed with them.
But yes, are we up against fake solutions, and they are fake solutions from reform that that won't work, haven't been costed, can't be implemented, the easy answers that will deliver nothing. Yes, we are up against that, and that's why it's very important for me and for you and everybody else to hold what reforms say up to the light, because they are fake solutions, and they're fake. To peddle fake solutions to a worried public is about...
Does it sound weird to you that his voice has dropped a slight sort of note? It sounds like his voice is a little bit deeper there. Do you notice that?
Maybe. What, do you think that's because he's a bit nervous?
Yeah, I think he's really... Well, people were saying
clearly reform live in his head rent-free.
Yeah.
I mean, the more he talks about them, the clearer it is that he's terrified of them.
Oh, yeah. But the people were saying yesterday that were watching this interview, saying that he's clearly quite angry. And he's obviously one of these guys, a bit like Gordon Brown. He used to throw phones and stuff like that. He doesn't look like a guy that can control his anger very well. He looks like a guy that would just like go off the.
Yeah, he doesn't really shout much, but you can kind of see in his face that he's got this anger bubbling up, and that he's not relaxed. He's always very on edge. It seems to me.
Also, his description there. Should we play it again? Let's play it again, because his description of what reform's policies are like could be actually describing his own. Have a look.
But yes, are we up against fake solutions, and they are fake solutions from reform that that won't work, haven't been costed, can't be implemented, the easy answers that will deliver nothing. Yes, we are up against that, and that's why it's very important for me and for you and everybody else to hold what reforms say up to the light, because they are fake solutions, and they're fake. To peddle fake solutions to a worried public is about as unpatriotic as you can get.
It's almost as though he's changed his voice because he's trying to be more serious or something. I don't know. But, I mean, certainly fake solutions for, you know, solutions which won't work. A bit like the one-in, one-out policy, it sounds to me, you know.
I mean, look at any policy area. I mean, their one-in, one-out policy, well, they can't even get one person over on a flight. That was clearly a fake solution to the small boats crisis, even if they did manage to swap 50 people over a week. The solution to our huge energy bills was, oh, we'll get Ed Miliband to build a load of wind turbines, and don't worry, all your bills will come down by 300 quid. They've got up by 300 quid. That was a fake solution. The solution to our black hole was apparently to do a budget that raised taxes by 40 billion quid. That hasn't worked out well. That was a fake solution. We had Rachel Reeves thinking she could solve the country's problems by just doing a big tax on the rich. How's that worked out? They've all fled to Dubai. That was a fake solution. I could go on all day with the number of fake solutions they've given us. So who are they to sit there and say that about the Reform Party?
This is why they'll never get anywhere criticising Reform for not being ready for government, because they weren't ready for government.
No, clearly.
And they're 14 months in, they're still not ready for government, and it's all going horribly wrong. The wheels are falling off, and they've got nothing to actually say that's in any way positive.
I know. I mean, what I was hearing sort of, you know, May, June sort of time is that everyone in number 10 was thinking, we've just got to get to the summer recess. It's all going wrong, but we just get to the summer recess, and then we can all have a break, we can reset over summer, and then we'll come in all guns blazing for phase 2 in the autumn. Phase 2 has not got off to a good start, has it?
Phase 2 is dead in the water, I think, is what you might say.
Yeah, let's
Meanwhile,
just skip that and go to phase 3, whatever
Danny Kruger became the first sitting MP to defect to Reform UK, Conservative Party, of course, from Wiltshire. I didn't realise he was the son of Bake Off judge Prue Leith. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. So, yeah, he's been given the role of preparing Mr Farage's route to number 10 because he's been in senior roles in government before. So he's thought to now be one of the things that Nigel Farage has said is that what they need more of is people who have actually been in government and who understand the wheels of government and understand how to get around the civil service and understand how to just get the day-to-day stuff done. So it's a big signing, and I think everybody could see yesterday that this means that Nigel Farage means business. I know there is some in Reform who say we don't just want all these washed-up Tories joining us, you know. But he's not what you would consider a washed-up Tory, and it means they've now got an extra MP, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're now back to 5 MPs where they started after they tragically lost.
5 go mad in Westminster.
Yes, I think that this is really significant, this defection, because this is not just any Tory MP. This is the guy who was managing Robert Jenrick's leadership campaign, and he stuck with the Tories for a year after that disastrous general election last year, trying to do his best to revive them. Clearly thought Jenrick maybe gave the party some hope, and the fact that he has now jumped ship, ditched Jenrick, who was probably thinking, I'll have Danny Kruger by my side if I get another chance at a leadership election. Danny has now, after thinking very carefully about it, realised that the only way to defeat socialism is with reform. They are the vehicle to do that. He recognised someone as big as him. I think, you know, Nadine Dorries was a big, well-known name to switch over, and everyone spoke about that a lot. But I don't think that was significant,
not MP
because
anymore, is she?
Yeah, but I think everyone's always seen her as a bit of a rebel, so it wasn't really that big of a surprise. Whereas this is a guy who hasn't been a super rebellious MP.
No.
He's been you know, he's been a long-standing Tory his whole life, very thoughtful, intelligent guy, and not someone to just throw his toys out the pram and rebel and switch to another party on a whim. So I think this is really, really telling that the Tory party is finished. And now that someone
that's what he said.
And now that someone as big and well-respected as him has moved across, a lot of other Tory MPs are thinking, maybe he's right. Maybe the only way to defeat Labour is if we switch over to reform.
And maybe the only way to save your seat as well is to
exactly.
join reform. So
and reform do need to be careful not to take anybody and everybody, but I do think this particular one is a good move.
Well, let's have a look at what he said yesterday.
The Conservative Party is over. Over as a national party. Over as the principal opposition to the left. But I am not despondent, because conservatism is not over. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant. Because the failure of the Conservative Party has created space for an alternative.
And there we are. This from Chris in Northumberland. Wow, Red Ed is the only one guy who was more dull to listen to than Robert Peston. What a duo. Darren in Plymouth says, great show, mate. I don't need to be up until 7, but this last few weeks I've been getting up at 6. One thing I'd like to know, this batch of migrants that were prevented from being sent back to France, do we end up getting the ones that France earmarks as the returnees regardless? Keep up the good work. Can't wait to see what farcical fun unfolds today. Well, presumably not. Surely we won't. We surely won't be so bad at negotiating that we've gone, well, we'll take these guys coming in from France anyway, even though we haven't sent you any.
I wouldn't put it past Starmer. He's a terrible negotiator,
really
and that will be absolutely hilarious if we end up with 50 migrants a week coming our way from France, but we're not sending anybody back because the lefty lawyers stopped them from going. I mean, that would be absolutely
surprising.
Comical. We've then got the numbers coming into this country going up and up and up.
Yeah, absolutely right. Coming up, we'll tell you more about Ed Miliband and his council tax bill that he keeps handing over to us to pay for him on his behalf. 6:40.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:42. I'm here with Chloe Dobbs, and we got a voice note from Boz on One In, None Out.
Morning, Mike and the breakfast team. Travelling Boz here. Did anyone actually think that that person was going to be leaving yesterday, or any persons? That was only going to France. Remember the problems with Rwanda? Every time they put 3 or 4 people on, they were taken off because there was a challenge. It's a joke. One flight for one person. Just get a whole load of them, all in together, send them over.
I mean, it's mad, isn't it? Of course, the way they plan to do it, they say it's cheaper to put them on an Air France plane. Well, it's probably not cheaper if you try and put them on an Air France plane, then it doesn't work, and then you have to take them off the plane again, and then put them somewhere else for a while, and then try and put them on another plane the next day. I mean, that's not going to be cheaper than just putting them on a ferry, is it?
I mean, how dumb?
Can't just put them on a ferry?
I know. How dumb do the Home Office have to be? Of course, putting them on a commercial flight was going to be a stupid idea, and then you're going to have other passengers who are, normal.
Well, who wants to sit next to an illegal migrant who's being guarded by somebody?
This is the thing: is people are probably someone's going to get their phone out, they'll take a video, take a picture, send it to the press, and then all you need is one person to say, "Oh, he sat next to me on the plane and he touched my leg" or something like that, and then it's a whole big story. I mean, why didn't they just get either put them on a ferry or a private flight where? I mean, I guess there's no point in having a private flight if you've only got one person to put on it. But they should have hundreds of people by now. I mean, they started detaining people over a month ago. They should now have at least 200 people.
But here's the other thing: we don't know why they've detained people. We don't know what the circumstances are under which they've been detained. So, because like I said, over 5,000 people have come in, and they've only detained 100 of them. Well, why have they only detained 100 of them? Surely they should have detained all 5,000 of them.
I know. I mean, there are so many people coming in. Is it really that hard to pick out 50 people a week?
Well, they haven't got room, have they? But they shouldn't be picking out 50 people a week. They should be picking out all of them.
I know.
Because they're all coming illegally.
I know. Well, I mean, the way that what they call the deal, one in, one out, is very deceiving as it is.
Disingenuous. It doesn't mean that.
I know. It doesn't mean. They make it sound as though every person that comes over here is going to be swapped with somebody else, but it's not. It's only 50 out of the thousands and thousands that come.
Which is why it's a pointless activity.
Yeah.
I have to, at this point, with regard to not being too much of blowing my own trumpet, I've got a piece in the Sun today. Labour said they will do whatever it takes. Well, with a backlog of 120,000 migrants, it will take a lot more than one in, one out. Because it's never going to work, is it? Never going to work.
It's never going to work. It is a tiny, tiny policy. It is a tiny deterrent. There is a little chance that it may do something, but that something is going to be nowhere near enough to satisfy the British public, who feel like this is an emergency. It needs urgent, decisive action.
Exactly
and that is we're just not seeing it at all. They think that they can just twiddle their thumbs and take it all slowly. I mean, it was very clear to me.
It's like they think it's just going to stop happening, and it's not. But let's move on to Ed Miliband.
They think if they talk the talk, that the smugglers and the migrants will hear that and go, "Oh, we better not come across to Britain." They're thinking about maybe sending a few people back to France. No.
Yeah, because also the other thing is, I'm just going to get off this in a minute, that when they do get sent back, there's nothing to stop them coming back again.
Well,
they just come back illegally.
Apparently, if they've been sent back, then if they ever try to come again, their asylum claim will automatically be rejected. That's why they claim it's a deterrent.
But what if they come back and they come back looking like somebody else, or they come back having changed their ID? I mean, most of these people, we don't know who they are.
I mean, I don't know if we take the fingerprints when they come in.
I very much doubt it. They might do, but I don't think they fingerprint everyone. Anyway, let's talk about Ed Miliband, who's been accused of hypocrisy once again. He appears to have passed on to the taxpayer higher council tax bills for their second homes, because a lot of people now, thanks to the Labour government, have got council tax bills going up, because if you've got a second home, you have to pay more, right? This is one of the new policies that Angela Rayner put through. Analysis of MPs' expenses released last week showed that several Labour ministers, including Ed Miliband, Hilary Benn and Torsten Bell, who's meant to be the new great sort of thinker in the Treasury, as well as ministers in past governments as well, have more than doubled what they claimed compared with last year. People will be driven mad by this. So Miliband claims for his house in Doncaster, right, £3,285.90 in March to cover a council tax bill from there, up 108% from the amount he claimed in March of last year. Miliband has been MP for Doncaster North since 2005. Hilary Benn, the Northern Ireland Secretary and MP for Leeds Central, made 10 expenses claims for council tax of just around about £2,000. His tax went up 110%. And Torsten Bell in Swansea made the largest claim by any MP, £6,119.48. Bell's claim increased from 2,510. So the government are putting these prices up, but then the government ministers are not paying when the price goes up, they're just charging us. Marvellous, isn't it?
One rule for them and another for us, isn't it? I mean, yeah, presumably the reason why Ed Miliband's bill has gone up 108% is because of their crackdown on evil second homeowners.
Yes.
And they've got to pay double the council tax.
But he's passing it on to us.
Exactly.
Well, that's not,
and quite rightly, people who do have second homes are absolutely furious about the fact that they've got to pay double the amount in council tax.
Yeah.
And it would be okay for the government to do that if they say, you know what, we'll go through the hardship that you guys are going through as well. But no, they're not willing to go through any of the hardship that they place on people.
Well, we
it's
also,
an absolute
because we found
joke,
out
and it just
last
shows
week
that they're completely out of touch.
Well, we found out last week that Ed Miliband not only charges council tax to us, but he charges us his electricity bill and his gas bill for his second home as well, where he doesn't, by the way, have a heat pump. He's got a gas boiler, which he wants us to get rid of.
Not living the net zero lifestyle, is it? Again, it's one rule for them and another for us. And look, I don't have a problem with MPs expensing things that they are allowed to expense if they are
genuinely.
If they are an MP that doesn't have any other income, they haven't come from, they haven't got a big bank full of savings because they've worked some big job in finance before or something and saved up all their money and now a millionaire. But Ed Miliband's got plenty of money to splash around. So
also, why should we pay his council tax? We have to pay our own council tax. If he's got a second home, lucky old him. He can claim for all the expenses he likes in London because that's not where his whether that's where his main residence is or not. He's got a constituency house, but you have to pay the tax on it. Why should we pay it?
Exactly. Even if you just take the MP salary alone before you even think about all the freebies they get and everything they get to expense, there should be enough for you to pay for somewhere to live and pay for your council tax. But it seems for MPs that they just don't want to pay it. I mean, if I were an MP, and I knew that my wage was paid for by the taxpayer, I would be principled and I would know, the taxpayer is paying my wage. I need to be very careful not to waste taxpayers. Even if you're thinking, oh, it's only a few thousand out of the billions and trillions that comes in government money.
But that's not their decision. That
if you're using somebody else's money, you should be careful with it.
Yeah.
If I've just got my own money that I've made myself privately and I want to splash a cash on a big fancy meal out, then fine, that's my money. But if I'm using somebody else's money, I would feel conscious not to completely waste it.
Well, I'm sure that if you wanted to go and look at Ed Miliband's expenses, you'll find an awful lot of things in there that he shouldn't be claiming, but which he's claiming because somehow he's allowed to do so. Meanwhile, health tourism is costing the NHS £250 million in 3 years alone. £252 million is apparently the charges that have been put into various trusts in this country, different surgeries, different A&Es and all the rest of it, all people who have come here from foreign lands who haven't paid for it.
Yet another slap in the face to the taxpayer, both from Ed Miliband and people coming here on health tourism. Why on earth can you come to this country and get an operation done and not have to pay for it?
Yeah.
I mean, surely they should make you pay before you get on a flight to leave. I mean, that sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Either that or they're supposed to recover it from the foreign country from which that person came, because there is supposedly deals in place. But, of course, nobody bothers to do that, so they don't collect the money.
I mean, it's just an absolute joke. And what I presume the NHS have thought is, it's 252 million out of the billions and billions of our budget.
That's the problem.
But just on principle, this is an absolute slap in the face to the taxpayer because, I mean, they're, in the story on this, it's saying that could build 68 GP surgeries.
Yeah.
I'm sure people who are absolutely
3,200 doctors.
I'm sure people who are absolutely desperate for a GP appointment would say, actually, although 252 million is a small part of their huge budget, we desperately could do with anything we can possibly get so that people can actually get a GP appointment. And it's once again a case of Brits feeling like they're at the back of the queue.
Yes.
You can come here from another country.
And also the problem with the NHS is that there's too many people saying, oh, that's just 200 million. You know, but 200 million
but it all adds up.
And that's why they have such a waste of money.
And I think that goes for all of the government's operations. I mean, I'm very excited to see what happens if and when reform come in and they have their Doge unit to go through every department. I mean, you see it with so many things, with government contracts where they haven't even had multiple people bid on the contract and they're just handing someone way more money than they need to, but they might think, oh, it's just one contract, we can splash a load of cash on this, it doesn't matter. But then all of this adds up. They've got more staff everywhere than they need to have.
It's ridiculous.
And then we end up with this really bloated state that we've got, where about 45% or 44% of GDP is
absolutely ridiculous.
Government.
Rupert from Sussex says, Mike, the only one in, one out appears to be Starmer's team. Who will be next to this feeble administration? We do make you wonder. Morning, Mike and Chloe. So if Two-Tier knew then what he knows now, would he still be Prime Minister? Honestly, Mike, the guy's a cartoon, says Peter in Croydon. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Morning, Mike. Lee from Chelmsford. The one in, one out policy's got off to a great start. It seems like the only people that think it's a good idea is Two-Tier and his cabinet of chaos. They're chartering flights and trying to stick one bloke on, and they can't even get that right. And what makes it even worse is apparently the French are sending a flight back on Saturday full of illegals. So not only have we got them on boats, but we've also getting them on flights as well. It's unbelievable, Mike.
It really is. And Chloe asked that question. We'll try and get an answer for you during the course of the show, whether the French are going to send these people anyway, even if we haven't sent them anyone. But we've got one more break to take. It's complete chaos, isn't it? The cabinet of chaos. I like that. Back after this.
I never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. We, as you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:56. Goodness me, we're nearly at the end of the first hour. Chloe Dobbs is here with us. John in Devon says, how are all the illegals getting on a plane if they throw their passports away? Love the show, love talk. Well, that's a good question. The other question that's just put to me by Christian is, how is it that these lawyers are stopping people going to France? You know, it's like me saying to you, fancy going to Paris? And you go, no, I probably can't do that.
That might breach my human rights.
Lawyer's going to stop me going. It's bad, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it is bonkers. It is, again, it's the ECHR, Article 8, right to a family life. So they're saying, I've got a family member in the UK. Yeah. It'll be really traumatising for me to be sent to France where there is a sea of water between us. And I mean, it's just beyond belief. And we need to start ignoring the ECHR, like other countries do. This isn't some really out there rebellious thing to do. Other countries do it.
Yeah, I know.
France
Let's talk about the front page of the Express, because we've only got a couple of minutes left. Millions of households faced a nightmare Christmas food price hikes amid warnings Labour could clobber businesses at the budget. This is more bad news from Rachel Reeves' department. Her November the 26th budget, just before Christmas. Prices are going to go up.
Yeah, and food inflation is the worst when it comes to inflation. And we had Keir Starmer, when he was trying to distract from the looming tax rises in the budget, he put out one of his videos saying, the budget is going to be all about living standards. And everyone thought, hang on, the people who are on low wages, the thing that really affects them the most is food inflation. And that's going up and up and up. And you've had the supermarkets coming out, like Tesco, blaming Rachel Reeves for the inflation, because they say, look, we've got loads of people on minimum wage that work in our stores. We've got huge national insurance hikes to deal with as well. We have no choice but to pass some of that on to consumers. So we're not putting prices up just to get a load of extra profit for us. We simply have no choice. The other thing is also the shoplifting epidemic. We've had the guy in charge of Iceland come out and say it's losing them about 20 million quid a year, the shoplifting, and he says that really does actually affect prices.
Of course it does.
So they've had to come out with a scheme now at Iceland where they'll give you an extra £1 back on your card if you catch a shoplifter, because they can't trust the police to catch them.
Unbelievable. It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it, what's going on? One final one, we've got about 30 seconds left. Our substandard submarines. There's a picture in the Mail today of one of our submarines that literally looks like an old piece of junk. You know, it doesn't even look like it's made of metal. It's sort of covered in algae. Looks past its best after spending extra time at sea.
It's not a good photo, is it? It does make me worry that if we did have to go to war,
it's
that
like
we
when
would
people would make fun of the old Russian Navy and say, it's all crap. You know, well, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I don't think we'll be in a good place if we actually need to go to war.
But we're on a war footing, though, because Keir Starmer said we were, didn't he, some weeks ago? Brilliant. Chloe, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We're out of here. Richard Tice is coming up in the next hour. We'll talk to him about a great many things. This is Talk. Back after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. It is, of course, a Tuesday, September the 16th, the day after the one-in, one-out policy began. Unfortunately, though, I have bad news for you because despite what Shabana Mahmood said, the new Home Secretary, that basically we're going to have a brand new policy where we're going to absolutely and utterly crack down on migrants. We're going to send them back to France if they have no business being here. They've arrested around about 10. Or detained, shall we say, around about 100. And they were hoping to send them back starting yesterday. Unfortunately, they only had one guy lined up for a flight on Air France back to Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, and he didn't go on the grounds that he found a lawyer who stopped him from going. So they're going to have another go today at sending another one guy, it might be him, back to France, despite the fact that he's already started the legal process not to go. So my bet would be they won't get anybody there today either. So it's all a bit of a disaster. It's supposed to be one in, one out. So far, by my recollection, I've got a piece in The Sun that explains this rather well. It's something like 5,600 in, none out at all. Let's hear from Liam on that.
Good morning, Mike. Liam in Folkestone. I've got a good idea for all those liberal lefty lawyers that are defending these guys identified for the one in, one out. How about for every case that they take, they have to let this migrant stay in their house with them and their family until the case is finished? What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea, Liam. I think that might upset some of the liberal lefty lawyers, though, because they don't like actually having to do anything which involves changing their lives, do they? They just want to change everybody else's life. But the whole thing is a disaster, because in any event, even if they did manage to get rid of all 50 people in a week, they'd get another 50 coming back in the other way. We've got a flight coming in apparently on Saturday. I'm going to ask Richard Tice this question because he may know the answer. We've got a flight coming in on Saturday from France, which is going to have a load of migrants on it who have apparently been pre-approved to seek asylum in this country. Are they going to come regardless of whether we've sent any to them? I don't know the answer to that. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, on the front page of the Daily Mail, Starmer's socialist utopia goes into meltdown. Key number 10 aide quits over a vile slur about Diane Abbott. The Prime Minister admits he did know about the Mandelson Epstein emails. And party unrest mounts as MPs say he'll be gone by May. I'm not even sure it'll last that long. Mandelson emails add to pressure on Starmer, front page of The Times, and the front page of The Guardian says crisis for the Prime Minister grows as aide quits. I mean, this guy, Starmer, is about the worst Prime Minister we've ever had. You know that, I know that. I've been saying it for a very, very long time. Question is, what can we do to help him on his way? 0344 499 1000 is the number. As I say, Richard Tice coming up in a little while. We'll be talking also to Maria Caulfield, NHS nurse, former Conservative MP, because we've just found out as well there's £250 million going south. Because the NHS is spending money on operations for foreign patients and never recouping the money. It's madness, isn't it? This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Mike in Newcastle says, I would not be surprised if the government starts to bribe illegal migrants to get on flights to France. Well, as we said in the last hour, why are human rights lawyers allowed to stop people going to France? It's not a dangerous country. It's not exactly like Rwanda, is it? Which wasn't a dangerous country either, by the way. But it's not like we're sending people to somewhere where they're likely to be tortured. I mean, I know the food's not great in France, but hey, you know, it's not really that bad, is it? Richard Tice is here, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Richard, very good morning to you.
What was that? 5,600 in and none out. And now you're saying, actually, they're going to send an aeroplane of more people that we apparently have pre-approved.
Yes.
Has the world gone mad? Is it the 1st of April? What's going on?
I know. Well, I mean, this whole one in, one out thing was complete nonsense to begin with, because actually all it does is add to the general number of people here, because it's not actually keeping a flat number. It's adding whoever came.
This will be the absolute test. If you're right about this flight, Mike, then Shabana Mahmood, as Home Secretary, must say, no, that flight is not coming.
Yeah.
It takes two to tango.
Yeah. I mean, so far they've tried to get rid of one person and failed. I mean, that's day one. You know, it doesn't exactly bode well, does it? They're going to have another go, apparently, later on today to see if they get the same bloke onto a different plane.
But as I understand, this is lefty lawyers in France. I mean, this is not even our own lefty lawyers.
Yeah.
So we've got our French folk at the same game. I mean, we should all become lawyers. It's the only way to make a fortune, it seems.
I mean, I thought that this government were boasting about the fact that they'd done a deal with France, an unprecedented deal, which meant for the first time we could return people to France. Well, it's not much of a deal, it seems to me. It doesn't work.
Well, it's certainly unprecedented. It's unprecedented in favour of the French. And it's an unprecedented disaster for us British citizens, because more come here, then they send even more that have been pre-approved, and we send them back zip. I mean, it absolutely beggars belief.
So now, it's as somebody pointed out, we've now got them not only arriving on dinghies into Dover, but we've now got them flying into Heathrow Airport. You know.
Well, it increases the chaos of a government that is in total meltdown, as per the headline, I think, in the Daily Mail this morning, where as every day goes by, there's another scandal, another person resigns. I mean, I think the Prime Minister must be quite relieved that today is the last day before recess. I mean, just imagine if there was PMQs tomorrow.
I know. Well, presumably he'd just get up like he has the last 2 weeks and declared that all his MPs behind him would be saying to them, please don't say you've got full confidence in me, because obviously you'll have to fire me the next day.
Imagine if he said he had full confidence in you. I mean, that would be the end of you, mate.
It would be. But, you know, the thing about, I'm just going to play you a clip. This is last night when he broke cover yesterday because he was so worried. It's like some kind of banana republic, right? He goes out there to justify what happened with Mandelson. Have a look at this.
Obviously, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post. And Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team. Went through a process, and therefore I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
So he's okay knowing that there was an association between Peter Mandelson and a convicted paedophile. He was fine with it as long as Mandelson said he regretted it. But he only discovered that it was a bad thing when he found out that actually the relationship was slightly more serious than that. But that makes no sense. I mean, he surely should have said, well, if you're friends with a paedophile, you can't have the job.
He's just said there that, I mean, it is, without question, the most important diplomatic job, ambassadorial job that we have with our key strategic ally. And he's recognised that he's putting in someone there who had a relationship with a convicted pedo. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so that calls into question his judgment. And he is in serious, serious trouble. There's a 3-hour debate, emergency debate, this afternoon. I don't know who's going to stand in on behalf of the government. You can be sure it won't be the Prime Minister himself. This is being called by David Davis under a mechanism called a Standing Order 24. And this will be a big moment because it'll be an absolute grilling of the government's position and lines, and whether or not actually the Prime Minister misled the House last Wednesday at PMQs. I mean, this is collapsing around his ears, and you've got Labour MPs all over the place, basically lining up to attack him after what was a bungled mega reshuffle. I mean, he reshuffled people out of positions that had only been there a year. Some of them were doing a sensible job, and now they're all hacked off with him. And you've got a whole bunch of people who are coming in who don't know what they're doing. Yeah. So you go back to square one again.
I'm not going to play all the clips because we played them in the last hour, but I mean, basically his kind of excuse for all of this is that, you know, I had my team ask a load of questions to Peter Mandelson, and when I went before PMQs last Wednesday, he hadn't answered the questions yet. And so that was why I said I had full confidence in him, even though he hadn't answered the questions. And because of the time difference, he said, he wasn't able to get the information. You know, he's the bleeding Prime Minister. I mean, I'd like to think if Nigel Farage is the Prime Minister and he needs to get something off the ambassador in Washington, he picks up the phone and he calls him. And if you have to wake him up at 4 o'clock in the morning, then that's the way it goes.
That's the way it goes. So it appears now that the Prime Minister, before PMQs last week, did know that there was a whole pile of emails between Mandelson and Epstein. But despite the fact that he's supposedly an intelligent man, a great lawyer, he didn't think to ask is there anything in there that might cause us a problem? And you sort of, it's a bit like, imagine this, your wife said it keeps getting loads of letters from a former boyfriend. I'm pretty sure you as the husband might, having found out that information, say, what's in the letters, darling?
Yes. You wouldn't wait until, you know...
I mean, it's not rocket science.
It's really not. But again, does this not show you how sort of hapless they are and how out of touch with the real world? Because they've never worked in business. You know, in business, imagine if you had some deal going on and something went wrong. You wouldn't be going, well, just get the team to get hold of the guy who seems to have disappeared with all the money. You know, you'd be literally chasing the guy around the world to find him and make sure he answered for what he had done. You wouldn't. I mean, this kind of, it's almost like council mentality that, you know, oh well, you know, we can't ring them today because you know, it's not 9 o'clock in the morning, or you know, we can't get hold of them because they're on holiday. You know, it's this kind of public sector mentality that nothing ever gets done.
Well, I think it's worse than that. The fact that the Prime Minister stood up and said that full process had been gone through and that he had confidence in him and he was doing a good job,
yeah,
was a serious error, misjudgment,
yeah,
misleading Parliament. I mean, these are, it doesn't get any more serious than this, really, as to his competence and what on earth went on. I think when you read between the lines, it's quite clear that what is normally a diplomatic appointment, and the predecessor seemingly was doing a good job, he essentially wanted Mandelson in there, and I think that they basically, a bit of a nudge and a wink, don't look too deeply, quick cursory glance, it's Mandelson, we know he's already resigned a couple of times, so everything's out there, don't worry, push on.
Yeah.
And then I think a whole bunch of sort of paperwork and gaps were sort of filled in later on.
That's the way it looks to me as well. It seems that he's trying to cover it up, and I mean, it's kind of ironic.
Here's the other point. At the time, everybody in the Labour Party was saying, yes, what a good idea, excellent, despite the fact that many knew that he had links with Epstein.
Right.
So it's pretty extraordinary how this has completely gone sort of full circle.
Yeah.
And who knew about these emails when he was appointed back in January? Lots of people must have known that there was something there.
Well, it certainly appears that the Foreign Office were in possession of an awful lot of information which they supposedly gave to Downing Street, but it's not clear who in Downing Street saw it or looked at it or paid any attention to it.
And it's a matter of when. Who had knowledge that there were a sort of a cache of emails back in January when he was appointed? And I suspect that certain people did know. And you have to ask, to what extent have the Foreign Office been incompetent or complicit within this whole process?
Well,
it's just beggars belief.
Well, when you got David Lammy at the head of it, you have to wonder, don't you?
Well, you don't anymore, but yeah.
Well, no, not now, but you do then, at the beginning of the year, you know.
At the time, that's correct. But there's many senior people in the Foreign Office who frankly should be called out on this, because
right.
It's a catastrophic failure. And I think there is, from what I understand, there were always serious question marks in Washington about this appointment.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Trump, obviously visiting today, beginning a state visit, as saying on the front page of the Telegraph, well, we're going to go a bit easy on Starmer because he's on the ropes. I mean, how embarrassing. You know, we get the President of the United States coming for a second unprecedented state visit, and you've got a guy sort of hiding in the shadows who won't want to be asked any questions at a press conference.
Yes, I think the idea of President Trump going easy on someone sounds like a bit of a new one. That's not actually his. I don't think that's his instinctive nature.
No,
but maybe he's mellowing with the presidency. But that's not his style. No. I suspect he might be all sweetness and light and in front of the cameras, but he'll be looking for his pound of flesh behind the scenes somewhere, I suspect.
I'm sure he will be. And also, this is such a useless government, right, that their timing on everything is ridiculous. I don't know if you've seen the front page of the Mirror, but they're bringing in this new thing called the Hillsborough Law, right, even as we speak, which means that basically the new law will make criminals of any public officials or police who lie to cover up scandals. Well, that's quite interesting timing, because it may well be that we discover that quite a lot of lying has been going on to cover up the scandal of Peter Mandelson and the appointment of Ambassador to the United States of America.
Yes, I suspect this may take some time to pass, and it may not be a retrospective. Surprise, surprise.
Yes. There's the thing. Let me give you some figures this morning, Richard. The revised estimate of employees on the payroll in July was down by 6,000. Provisional estimate for August was down another 8,000. And average regular earnings growth has fallen to 4.8%. So the kind of smoke and mirrors job they did by giving a load of free money to the public sector is starting to ebb away, you know, because they used to claim, well, one of the things we've done is we've raised, you know, earnings in Britain. Well, they haven't really, because they've only raised them for certain groups of people.
Well, that's right. It's called the public sector.
Yeah.
And when you actually net off the increase in public sector workers, what you're seeing is a much greater reduction in private sector payrolls, particularly in the hospitality sector. And that's why you're just seeing all of the data in the private sector, spending on travel, spending on construction, spending in hospitality. It's all catastrophic. And the numbers are falling at a very substantial rate. And let's just remember, in 3 of the last 4 months, the economy has not grown; it has reduced. So, we've got to watch out some important government borrowing data at the back end of this week, inflation data, I think, on Thursday. So, I think the Chancellor's decision to delay the budget to as late as possible, the end of November, could be another terrible decision. Waiting for some good economic news when actually the news
it's just getting worse.
It's just getting worse and worse.
Yeah. Let's finish with what Keir Starmer said last night about your own party, Reform. Listen to how he describes your ideas and think of them actually as his own.
But yes, are we up against fake solutions, and they are fake solutions from Reform that won't work, haven't been costed, can't be implemented, the easy answers that will deliver nothing. Yes, we are up against that, and that's why it's very important for me and for you and everybody else to hold what Reform say up to the light, because they are fake solutions, and they're fake. To peddle fake solutions to a worried public is about as unpatriotic as you can get.
Yeah, because all their policies work really well, don't they?
Well, it's funny, when they hold my cost savings up to the light, it turns out that Tice is right. I've been proven right on the voluntary quantitative easing payments of interest to banks. The OBR has now admitted that Tice was right on the cost of net stupid zero every year at about 30 billion. And with the exposure of the local government pension scheme overcharging and underperformance, where there's huge multi-billion pound savings that I've again exposed, once again, it's shown that actually we can save money, we should save money, but to do that, you need reform running councils and the country.
I mean, it's just a complete disaster. I don't know where it's going to end. Richard, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Deputy Leader of Reform UK there, telling us that his sums actually do add up, unlike the ones that come out of Downing Street and the ones that come out of the Treasury. Once again, breaking news, revised estimate of employees on the payroll in July down 6,000, provisional estimate for August down another 8,000, and average regular earnings growth falling to 4.8%. Mike, Starmer only needed to look at Prince Andrew getting bounced out of the royal family for his relationship with Epstein and use that as a yardstick. It's not rocket science, says Darryl in Blackburn. You would think, wouldn't you? Starmer is so full of self-importance, will never allow anyone else from his party into number 10. He would call a general election first, knowing they will lose, says Nan in Wales. Well, who knows what he's going to do next? It's almost impossible to tell, but it's bound to be the wrong thing, because that's seemingly his speciality. 21 minutes past 7.
never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. As you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 24 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. This is the home of common sense. It's where the nation comes to talk. And you can send us a voice note, 0344 499 1000, just like Mark has. He's got this.
Yeah, good morning. It's Mark in Lancashire. I just wanted to say my piece about the Tories joining Reform. Now, I can see why they need some experience, but I don't think that your average voter sat in Witherspoons, who's not particularly a political nerd, they don't really care about what particular opinions this particular Tory had or what he was involved in. The Tory brand is basically toxic and people voted against them. They're only 15% in the polls. So I think by filling Reform with Tories, you're basically giving the opposition an own goal. The liberal media, etc., BBC and Sky, the journalists, Koonsberg, Peston, they're just going to start saying, well, you're just the Tories. This is going to be their attack line in the run-up to the next general election. Plus, most normal people are just sick of politicians. We want businessmen as leaders now. Businessmen, people who've worked in the private sector. We've just had enough of politicians.
Mark, I think that message has been handed loud and clear to Nigel Farage. I think he gets that, but I also think the mammoth task that he's taking on, which is to basically become the next government and to be the first party to be in government for the first time ever, I think is probably weighing on his mind. And in the end, you do need some decent people who have done work at that kind of level before. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do with regard to some of those Reform voters, but there will be a lot of other voters who say, well, they're not just these mad extreme right-wingers then. They must have some sensible people in the party. That's the way people will say it. We'll see it. You might disagree with that, but I think on balance, this is why Farage has come to the conclusion that he's come to, that he doesn't want people too far to the right, and he wants to keep somewhere in the middle, because there's more voters there than there were, who used to vote Tory, who will now vote Reform. And I think that's kind of where it is. But, I'll take your views on it. You may disagree with me. 87222 is the number to send us a message on Talk. Start your message with the word Talk. At talkTV, of course, is the X account. And 0344 499 1000 is the voice note or calling number. Let's talk now, though, to Keith Best, former Chief Executive of the Immigration Advisory Service, a former Conservative MP himself. Keith, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, terrible start to the Shabana Mahmood plan for one in, one out, because they tried to get literally one out yesterday and they couldn't.
Well, I mean, it's the same as the rather failed Rwanda plan, wasn't it? I mean, enormous sums of money chartering an aircraft to try to drag one person onto a flight to get them to go abroad. I mean, these frankly, these schemes, I mean, they're stunts. I mean, they're not really an answer to the whole problem. And of course, the one in, one out, I mean, at least it's a start of trying to identify those people with links with this country who might therefore genuinely be accepted as refugees here. But you you can work out, and all the listeners and viewers can work out for themselves, 1 in, 1 out doesn't actually affect the numbers at all. And of course, it's not nearly as good as, sadly, what we lost when we left the European Union with Brexit, where we had the Dublin III agreement, which actually identified anybody who travelled through any European country where they had the opportunity to claim asylum. They could then be returned to that country under that Dublin III agreement, which existed throughout the whole of the EU. Now, we lost that. We've lost Eurodac. We've lost all the fingerprinting identification of asylum seekers who are coming in as to whether they've already claimed asylum in some other country and, you know, trying it a second time round coming to this country because they've been refused somewhere else. We've lost all that data as a result of leaving the EU, so I'm afraid it goes back to that.
Yes. But it's also become a much bigger problem now than it ever was when we were in the EU. I mean, coming up to sort of 2019, if you like, 2018, around then, you know, there was nothing like the numbers of people actually traversing Europe to get to Britain. There was nothing like the numbers of people coming from North Africa or from Asia to come into Europe. So it's kind of increased exponentially, I think, over time,
well, and that's understandable, Mike, isn't it? Look, I mean, you know, thanks to the mobile phone, we now know more about what's going on the far side of the world than we do in our neighbour's house. Yeah. People know about conditions. They know if they want to do asylum shopping, they can do it by finding out which countries are more preferable. Of course, you've got the traffickers who are exploiting that and finding any weak points in the armour of any country's immigration policies. And you know, now it is comparatively cheaper to travel in the world than at any time in previous history. Yeah. So, you know, people can come, but also you've got to remember there are a hell of a lot more conflicts in the world. And, you know, Afghanistan, we've got, you know, something like 100,000 Afghans in this country now, fleeing quite properly from...
Well, we brought a lot of them here, though, didn't we? We brought loads of them here because
we
of that
did, because we had an occupation force in Afghanistan. It may have been for perfectly legitimate reasons, and then we left them in the lurch like the Americans did by just pulling out and leaving them to the mercies of the Taliban and destroying women's opportunities for career progression and education. And we pulled out, and of course all those people who came in those two schemes, which have now been discontinued, they were ones who'd had direct links with British forces.
But the trouble is we don't know that, because the trouble is we have had over the course of time useless civil servants who have not done their job properly. You know, the whole reason why we imported 150,000 Afghans, because we didn't have 150,000 Afghans helping the British forces there, because there was nothing like that. But they didn't know. So effectively, we may have imported people who are actually in the Taliban. We don't even know that.
Well, there's always going to be that kind of problem, isn't there?
Well,
when you have an administration trying to identify people. But I know of people, and I'm in touch with people who've fled to Iran, for example. Obviously, I won't name them, and I won't name where they are for their own personal safety. But, I mean, these are people who worked for British charities in Afghanistan, but they don't qualify. They don't come within the very tight criteria of those two schemes. So there are a hell of a lot of people still left in Afghanistan, or who've had to flee to neighbouring countries, who actually did help directly the British, and therefore would be fingered by the Taliban as being people who should be discriminated against, or even worse. And those people are still there.
Yeah, well, you could have a whole argument about whether or not we should have ever gone there in the first place, which, you know, is not probably for this particular moment in time. But the trouble is we've got a Home Office not fit for purpose, we've got a Foreign Office that hasn't been working very well, and we are ending up in this position that we are currently in, where billions and billions of pounds is being spent on people who are coming to this country, who are being put up in hotels and who are being found accommodation. And it's simply not sustainable, is it?
Well, you may remember, because you're of a similar age, Mike, many, many years ago, famously, a Labour Home Secretary said the Home Office was not fit for purpose.
That's right, John Reid.
And frankly, in this regard, I don't think they've ever really improved.
No.
And that's
why do you think that is,
the real problem.
I mean, you've worked in this business, if you like, for quite some time, for your knowledge of it. You know, why is the Home Office so bad at this?
Well, I think, first of all, in fairness to the civil servants who work in the Home Office, there's been a massive amount of political chopping and changing. I mean, there has not been a consistent policy. Every new government comes in and changes the policy or tweaks it in some way. I mean, for me, the answer was obvious 40 years ago when I was involved from the very, very beginning. And that is that you have a quick processing system where people come and claim asylum. We should offer asylum like every other civilized nation in the world does under the 1951 Convention on Refugees. We should do that, but only to those who actually are genuine refugees. So you need a robust and early system of identifying those people. And as far as where people stay, and I know there's a big controversy over asylum hotels and accommodation, things like this. Of course, people sadly don't understand that actually that accommodation for asylum seekers is totally separate from accommodation for homelessness or for people on the waiting list. Although I can understand why people see if they've got refugees in hotels, why aren't they there?
Exactly, but that's the thing. You can't separate the two things in the end.
No, they're not in the public mind. I accept that entirely.
And also not in communities, you know, where you've got an awful lot of people suddenly moving into community who didn't used to live there. And that's the problem.
But the other thing, Mike, you have to bear in mind that, you know, if you do speed up the process and people are granted refugee status, then of course within 28 days they lose all accommodation, they lose any benefits, and they only get £6 a week anyway if they're in accommodation with food being provided. They lose all that, and they then fall into the responsibility of the local authority. What does the local authority do? It pays hoteliers to provide accommodation for people who are on their waiting list or who are homeless.
So the only answer,
it just switches from one government department to another.
So the only answer, Keith, is to deport loads more people who shouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to run. Former Chief Executive of the Immigration Advisory Service and former Conservative MP. Let's get Starmer on deportations to France.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal.
A different individual will be allowed to come. Well, there's a load of different individuals coming on Saturday, apparently, on an Air France jet. We still haven't worked out whether it's coming regardless of whether we've sent anybody to them. But, of course, you just heard him say those words. They will be returned in short order. Well, apparently they won't be returned in short order because one guy that they tried to return yesterday was not returned in short order because he's got a lawyer who's told us that, I'm afraid, he's going to be fighting this deportation. And so they're going to try and put him on another plane today, which will also probably fail. Let's get a voice note from Sam.
Morning, Mike. Great show. You know, all these hard lefties are always banging on about, oh, if we were in the EU, things would be better. People have more rights and everything would be better. Well, no, it wouldn't. In fact, what I don't understand, Mike, is this. A lot of those countries, as you've already said, or your guest has, ignore that article of the ECHR, so you can basically do what you want and basically decide in your own interest of your country to ignore it. And the countries, major countries in the EU, work around it, ignore it, and yet we go, oh, we better obey it, even if it means our house burns down. We don't care. We feel fluffy.
It's true. I mean, I've been saying this for months, probably a couple of years. Just ignore it, because that's what an awful lot of European countries do. They don't have to abolish it, they don't have to leave it, they don't have to abandon it, they just don't pay any attention to it. It's a lot easier that way. 7:37.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 7:40. I'm here with you, of course, until 10 o'clock. Julie Holliger back at 10. What Starmer's one in, one out really means is one boatload in, no migrants out, says Peter in Swansea. And Chris says, morning, Mike, simple. Starmer's a liar. Look at the way they attacked Boris over Partygate. He needs to resign and go for an election. I mean, so many people now just say he's a busted flush. He's done. There's nothing now further that he can do. Wouldn't you think that if you're under that much pressure, says Martin, you would ask your own questions? But in the interview, Starmer says, I have seen the questions and they were the right questions to ask. Yeah, that's a very odd thing to say, isn't it? You know, it's like, again, it's like a lawyer with a team of lawyers. He's like, well, I don't ask the questions, I just ask somebody to ask the questions, and then you don't get the answers in time for you to actually make a statement which makes any sense. And that's how he got himself to this muddle in the first place. Absolutely ridiculous. Gerald in Bournemouth says, one in, one out. Remember, France can reject any illegal we return to France, and the UK are not allowed any background information on a refugee that France sends to the UK. Well, they're supposedly sending a bunch of them on Saturday. It's great, isn't it? Alex Wilson's here, Reform UK's London Assembly member. Alex, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm not bad at all. I've been writing this morning in The Sun about the terrible state of this one in, one out scenario. But it's worse than that if you're in London, because it turns out that Sadiq Khan's London is now apparently an investment no-go zone. So, you know, they don't mind migrants coming in, but they don't want any investment.
Yeah, well, it shows the Labour Party just are not interested in helping the economy grow, attracting investment, getting things moving again. They're anyone who wants to take a risk and with their own money or with the company's money and try and create economic activity, not welcome in Britain because they're just taxed out of oblivion, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because God knows we need some economic growth, and it's the private sector that's going to deliver that. You know that, I know that, the British people know that. Unfortunately, the people in government, both locally in London and nationally in Westminster, don't have a clue.
And a lot of this is about house building as well. And Mayor of London has consistently failed to hit his targets, hasn't he? I mean, he's made target after target after target, and he's hardly ever built any houses. And what house builders are now saying is that his affordable housing targets are actually strangling their attempts to build homes as well.
If you put more and more regulation on the sector, it's going to be harder to deliver. And yet, in theory, a larger slice of a smaller cake is less cake. Ultimately, you've got to get houses built, and it doesn't matter what type, what tenure they are. We need more of everything. But you're right. Year on year on year, we've had persistent under-delivery, and it's not just Sadiq Khan in London. It's councils up and down the country. This housing crisis affects everybody in this country, particularly acute in London, where it is harder than ever to get on the ladder, either for purchase or for rent. But it does affect everybody. It's persistent failure at all levels.
It really is. And, commercial property in London is still relatively at a premium, but you do wonder, with all of the people who moved out of offices and who sent people home to work, where all the actual occupational room is, because I know Canary Wharf is not anywhere near as full as it used to be. I mean, where's all that money gone?
Yeah, I don't know. It's worrying, very worrying, because the people aren't coming into the office and working, but then also has a knock-on effect on all the hospitality and retail surrounding these areas, and yet another nail in the coffin of the British economy and the London economy in particular.
And what did you make of the story that came out yesterday in the front page of the Express about Sadiq Khan? And it was a whistleblower, I think, from the police, who said that there's a really, really big problem with rape gangs in London, Pakistani rape gangs in particular, and Sadiq Khan's kind of covering it all up.
Well, it didn't surprise me, because look, this is an issue which has been going on up and down the country, and it would be very, very strange if it wasn't happening in London. So for it now to be exposed as there definitely is something going on, and yet this is something that Khan has hid from. I mean, you'll have seen the clips when Susan Hall, Conservative Assembly member, has been pushing him at a mayor's question time repeatedly, and he pretends to not know what she's even talking about, because he doesn't want to accept it. He can't accept that there is a problem in particular communities, that it's rife in London as it is in many other cities. And it's these young girls that are the victim of this, they need justice. They need these questions to be asked. They need the investigations to be done. Had the Labour government nationally refusing initially to progress with a national inquiry. What are they hiding from?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. We'll hopefully find out in due course, and if we all keep chasing the story, finally you might have to answer some proper questions. Thanks very much indeed, Alex Wilson, Reform UK's London Assembly member. Mike, why are people all saying on an Air France flight without asking why? Why not on a BA flight? Why not on a Ryanair flight? I'm sure Macron insisted on using Air France, and you can be sure the ticket cost per bum is astronomical, and a hapless pretend Prime Minister agreed to it. Great show. Well, I can only assume that it's Air France on the basis that that's who they negotiated the deal with, but it's a perfectly good point you make. I don't know is the straight answer to that. Dennis in Manchester says, morning Mike, when the Rwanda flights were cancelled by the ECHR, His Majesty's loyal opposition used it as evidence that the government were incompetent and demanded an election. Now that the ECHR have blocked their daft one-in, one-out policy from taking off, is this evidence that the government are incompetent so we can demand an election? Well, I would say so, yeah. Shabana Mahmood spent most of last weekend talking about how she would stop at nothing to get all of these people out of the country. Well, she's already stopped at nothing because nobody's gone out of town and nobody's gone out of the country. So I guess she's fulfilled her ambition, if that's the case. Let's get a voice note from Elle.
I love your show, Mike. Listen every single day without fail. We did say, didn't we, both of us, that something would get rid of Starmer a lot quicker than the next general election, and it was just a case of what. And I think this is it. So he's going to be gone very soon.
I think it looks like that, doesn't it? It looks like he's literally not going to have a leg to stand on soon. I mean, after this hearing today in Parliament, which has been ordered by David Davis, as you heard Richard Tice saying earlier, you know, it's going to be incredibly embarrassing for the government, incredibly embarrassing for Keir Starmer, incredibly embarrassing for Morgan McSweeney, his chief aide. I don't see how he gets through it. I really don't. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to be talking to Maria Caulfield in a moment about stuff going on inside the NHS. They've already started saying there's going to be a busy winter in the NHS. Well, maybe they should stop doing so many operations and giving so much money away to people who come here from foreign countries who get treatment, and then we end up picking up the tab. It's to the tune of about £250 million over the last 3 years. Absolutely shocking stuff. 7:46.
I never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. We, as you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. 10 minutes to 8 in the morning. I'm here till 10 o'clock, of course. Mike, when Starmer says, if I knew then what I know now on the Mandelson matter, it's not about putting Mandelson in post, it's about getting caught out afterwards and humiliated. Again, says Paul in Essex. And Dave says this, hypocrisy again. Accusations that reforms policies are fake. This from a fake Prime Minister with a fake cabinet and fake mandate, achieved on lies and fake promises, all of which are causing the public to be worried in the first place. Dave's in South Gloucestershire. Let's talk about the NHS right now, though, because Maria Caulfield is here, NHS nurse, a former Conservative MP, of course. We're being told once again, not surprisingly, that we're being prepared for a winter of discontent with the NHS. Apparently they're wargaming various exercises to get ready for the upcoming winter period. But there's also a story, Maria, this morning, very good morning to you, about £250 million being the cost of NHS health tourism over the last 3 years, which would have been enough to pay for 68 GP surgeries or 3,200 doctors. So there's a lot of problems and they don't ever seem to get fixed.
Yeah, no, and it's surprising that, you know, they're leaving it so late in the year to worry about winter pressures, because winter pressures begin incredibly early. And two things that I would, you know, particularly concerned about. They talk about staffing levels in A&E, but we know that there are new medical students, new GP doctors, new nurses who are qualifying this September and have no jobs because money in the NHS has been wasted on the pay rise, right. 22% pay rise for doctors, but more importantly, the NHS England redundancy package, and it's not going to frontline staff that could help with capacity issues. But also, we know that A&E really is supposed to be for people coming with an accident or an emergency, but because people can't get to see their GPs, they have no other option to go to A&E, and that adds pressure. But really, the big thing for me with Labour in particular was scrapping that winter fuel allowance. Last winter, there was a 20% increase in deaths of flu or pneumonia across all age groups, and there was the highest number of 85-year-olds ever admitted in a winter period, and that was down to people being afraid to turn on their heating. And this year is no different. Although they're making changes, you ask most elderly people, they don't know if they're going to get the winter fuel allowance or not. So those sorts of pressures are easily avoidable with organisation and you know, planning and being prepared. But unless you crack that nut of being able to access healthcare without having to go to A&E, every year you're going to see the same pressures.
Right. And nobody says anything about those figures from last winter, which is interesting. It's the first time I've heard them, because we all said at the time that that's probably going to be the result. But you certainly don't ever hear Labour government talking about it. But that's the thing. I have this conversation. It usually begins around about October time, so we're slightly earlier this year, about why it is that, you know, it's not as if nobody knows that this is going to be the problem about ambulances and waiting times and A&Es. You know, it's the same problem every year, and yet I always ask the question, why does the NHS not do something about it? I mean, I can understand that some people say, well, you know, there's no strong policy coming from the government or whatever, but surely the managers of the NHS should be addressing it.
Yeah, and I've made this point to you before, Mike. To be fair to the government, the way the NHS is set up, ministers have very little power over the NHS. It is NHS England that has the lever of powers. Each organisation within the NHS is an independent organisation. Each hospital trust is independent. Yeah. Each GP practice is independent. And so you can make these announcements, but it doesn't mean that they'll happen in practice. And the sorts of things that we tried to implement was putting GPs into A&E. So if someone turned up because they hadn't been able to get to see their GP, a GP could see them there and then rather than the A&E team. We opened up the Pharmacy First service so that people could go to pharmacies for some of their minor ailments. And a lot more of that needs to happen. But to be fair to ministers of all colours, you don't actually have any powers to direct the NHS to do that. But NHS England, which is maybe why it's being abolished, has those powers, but very rarely uses them.
Yeah, exactly. But that's just the other thing you all say to me, is that there's more kind of people in management jobs now than there used to be, and not as many people on the floor doing clinicians' jobs. And this policy exchange report, which has come out today, it's in the Sun and the Mail, basically says there's an awful lot of money which could be saved because of all of this money owed by overseas patients. My understanding is that, you know, I know doctors don't like to collect money actually at the hospital, but they should be recovering it from foreign governments in some way, shouldn't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But there was a real reluctance in the Department of Health to want to look at that. And I'm not sure it's fair on hospitals to be the ones doing that, because they've got a busy enough job anyway. But certainly the Department of Health could be supporting them in doing that. But also we did introduce the NHS surcharge for legal migrants. So people who come legally here to work, some of the doctors and nurses, they pay thousands of pounds a year to be able to access NHS services. And it's not fair that then someone who comes here illegally gets those services, and sometimes better services than local residents, for absolutely nothing. And that's, I think, why people feel so aggrieved that, you know, when they're struggling to get at 8 a.m. in the morning, they'll be phoning in 5 minutes to their GP receptionist, they can't get through or can't get an appointment, when, you know, there's others that haven't contributed that seem to get that for free. But legal migrants have to pay the NHS surcharge, so they certainly do contribute, and then paying their taxes when they're working.
Yes, but if they have to pay the surcharge, it might be that we have to pay that for them, though, no?
So not for legal migrants. They have to pay that up front before they get their visas. But certainly there is, you know, with the numbers of illegal migrants increasing, it is putting additional pressures, because very often people come and we don't know their health status, and so they have to be assessed, and that all puts pressure on health services which are struggling anyway, even at the best of times.
Yes, exactly right. Maria, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Maria Caulfield there, NHS nurse and former Conservative MP. £250 million, the cost of health tourism in the NHS. Some trusts are recovering just £40 of every £1,000 they're owed by overseas patients, despite government pledges to crack down on freeloaders. Because the point is, doctors don't particularly want to recover the money. I can see why they don't want to do that. They should have other people to do that. But equally, there should be a way and a method for countries who are used by or countries from where people come to get treatment in this country. They should be built for it, surely, right? Let's get a voice note from Carl.
Hi, Mike. Carl in Bury. It's becoming a bit strange this now, because when I wanted Keir Starmer to go, and obviously when a government gets in, you want it to be successful, but it's gone so bad now that in a way I actually want the government to fail. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I actually want 3 or 4 years of absolute disaster, or hopefully only a couple of years of disaster, and basically to get rid of them, because the last thing I want is for these lot to be back in again.
Well, let's hope they can make a mess of it even quicker than that, and then we get rid of them even faster. You know, like, say, by 2027. John's in Farnham. Let's have a chat and see whether he wants to talk about Starmer, I think. Hi, John.
Hello, Mike. It's John, yeah.
What do you want to say, man?
I'd just like to say how great your show is. I watch you every morning.
Thank you.
I'm 73 years old. I'm astute, the same as what you are, Mike. And I've never known such a shambles in all my life.
I know, it's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was coming. I mean, the way he taxed the workers and the companies is a disgrace. I said straight along, as soon as they come in and they done this, you could. I mean, I'm an ex-union man. I worked under the likes of Jack Jones, Spon Todd, etc.
Right.
Do you know what? You knew. I always voted blue though, but you know, you knew what was going to come in. Jobs had to go. I was a shop steward for years.
Right.
You're going to lose 3 or 4 or 5 people in every shop that's available.
Yeah.
You're going to lose night workers. You're going to lose lorry drivers, because that is the only way you can only get rid of people to survive.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's just put thousands now on the dole himself. I mean,
yeah, there's no end to it.
That Unite. I watched that Unite.
Unite the Kingdom.
You know, UK.
Yeah.
And I mean, is Starmer too thick to realise that these people are on the march because of him? Everything he's done is wrong, Mike.
Yeah.
And he wonders why the people are all against him now.
I know. Well, it's not just the people who are against him, his own party's against him. Even the Labour people who supposedly wanted him to be the Prime Minister are running against him as well. Carl, great conversation. Thank you very much indeed. Everything is his fault. There's no question about it. He can't get anything right. Even the one-in, one-out scheme was supposed to start yesterday. None out, because the one person they wanted to put on the plane wouldn't go, because he's got a lawyer, which we told them would happen, and it happened. Because it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Nostradamus to see that coming, do you? This is Morning Glory, back after the news.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Sarah in Morden says, Starmer must have a new voice coach who's trying to make him sound less boring, and he brought it out to talk about Mandelson, random words that make no sense. I'm going to be asking you a little bit later on, actually, in this hour when we play the clip, what's happened to Starmer's voice? It seems to have got a little bit deeper, almost as though he's got an added sort of timbre to it, as we like to say in the voice coaching business. He's made it sort of slightly slower and slightly deeper to make him sound slightly less like, you know, what's that guy that he sounds like? The guy from Zippy from Rainbow. Fixing the foundations. It's almost as though he's deliberately tried to sound more serious. I don't know. Here's what he said, though, before the one-in, one-out scheme collapsed so spectacularly yesterday, and they tried to send one out, and he stayed in, I'm afraid.
For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal.
A different individual will come here. We don't know whether the different individual will come here regardless of whether the other individual's gone out the other way. And we also don't know whether the different individual that will come here will be coming to stay, or whether he's already been granted asylum, or whether he's already been sort of pre-approved by the French. It's all a bit of a mystery, to be honest. Meltdown is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. Key number 10 aide quits over vile slur about Diana. I bet that's the latest nightmare scenario for Keir Starmer. He's admitted that he did know about the Epstein Mandelson email exchange, and he says he also is unaware of exactly when he found out about it. He thinks it was sometime on Wednesday afternoon, after he'd already offered his full confidence in Peter Mandelson, the former ambassador to the United States of America, who's now been fired as a result of some emails that were discovered by Keir Starmer, apparently too late to not give him the kind of the seal of approval from the Prime Minister. It's a complete and utter shambles. Crisis for the Prime Minister grows, it says on the front page of The Guardian, and The Times has got Mandelson emails add to pressure on Starmer. There's an emergency debate going on this afternoon in the House of Commons, ordered by David Davis MP, the veteran Tory, because he wants to get to the bottom of what Keir Starmer knew and when he knew it. And if he didn't know it early enough, why did he not know it early enough? And why wasn't he told by the Foreign Office about how much of a scumbag Peter Mandelson was? I'm sorry to use that word, but at the end of the day, this is a guy who was mates with a paedophile, best pals with Jeffrey Epstein, the man who pretty much brought down Prince Andrew, who hasn't been able to go out ever since. And we apparently rewarded Peter Mandelson with a job in Washington, D.C., sitting in the British Embassy. Marvellous, isn't it? 0344 499 1000 is the number. James Heal coming up, Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. Let's get it on. Jack Elsom, the political editor of The Sun, is going to join us as well, because I've written a piece for The Sun today on page 12, actually, in which it says this about the one-in, one-out scheme. The plan will make the issue worse. Labour say they will do whatever it takes. Well, with a backlog of 120,000 migrants, it will take a lot more than one in, one out. And as we pointed out yesterday, as of yesterday, it was still 5,600 in and none out. Welcome to Britain, 2025. Here's what Keir Starmer had to say yesterday when he decided to break cover and finally give an interview about his knowledge of the Peter Mandelson scandal.
Obviously, the post, the diplomatic post of American ambassador, really important post, and Peter Mandelson, before he was appointed, went through a due diligence process. That's the propriety and ethics team went through a process, and therefore I knew of his association with Epstein. But had I known then what I know now, I'd have never appointed him.
Yeah, well, it's all very well to say that, but let's ask James Heal what he makes of this, because it turns out that Keir Starmer there, as you heard, admitted that he knew about the association between the two of them. So apparently that was OK, James. Very good morning to you. It was all right to know about the association because he apparently, Mandelson, regretted it, and therefore that was good enough for him to be appointed. However, If you know about the association of a man with a convicted paedophile, surely that would, generally speaking, disqualify you from such a high-profile job.
Well, you'd think, Mike, but I think what's clear is that Number 10 hoped that this was all priced in, that would be buried, that the Epstein story was died with the man himself, and then actually they'd be able to get away with it. And clearly that was a miscalculation, and that was a misreading about the mood in Congress and what was happening with Trump, and also a kind of a failure to realise and appreciate the enormity of what Mandelson had been accused of in terms of his failures of judgment, and also how the story would inevitably blow up in a party that's very sensitive on issues around violence against women and girls.
Yeah, well, they say they are, but I mean, seemingly they sort of pick and choose their moments, don't they, when they want to be serious about women and girls and violence against them. Let's have a look at the next bit, which is his timeline on what Number 10 knew and when they knew it.
It was only on Wednesday early evening that I knew the contents of the Bloomberg emails. It was only very late on Wednesday when Peter Mandelson replied to the questions that had been put to him by government officials, and it was on that basis that I took my decision that he should be removed. What I knew before PMQs was that there had been media inquiries. I didn't know the content of the Bloomberg emails, and I knew that questions had been put to Peter that he had not yet answered, and he hadn't answered them by the time it got to PMQs. There is, of course, a time lag in America, but I knew that there are questions that have been put to him, but I didn't know what answers he was going to give to those questions. That came later on Wednesday, and that's why, at that point, I gave the answer I did at PMQs, and that's the extent of what I knew at the time.
I mean, it sort of beggars belief, doesn't it, James, that here's the guy who's running Britain, who apparently waits for Peter Mandelson to wake up in his smoking jacket and have a couple of poached egg and some kippers, but before he answers some questions they've asked him about what he knew and when he knew it. And he thought, well, there's no point. Why don't you pick up the bleeding phone and just say to him, Peter, you need to answer these questions before I go into the chamber, please?
Yeah, or actually just give a holding answer and fail to go and defend him the way he did. Look, right. I think that there was a lack of intellectual inquisitiveness about the asking the key questions here. Clearly, I think that people in government feel that insufficient kind of work was done, and actually they had put out this sort of very breezy statement, etc., at PMQs. Clearly, I don't think, as you say, Mike, enough was done to establish the full facts, and that's why the Prime Minister was left exposed, and now we have him on the record defending Peter Mandelson. It's the sort of reverse Midas touch. Every time he backs someone, they end up having to go.
And he appears to be sort of trying to blame the people around him, doesn't he, that for not kind of giving him things or showing him things or telling him things which he should have known before he went out there to defend Mandelson. But I'm afraid that's not going to wash, is it?
Well, clearly you think that the Prime Minister would want to have you know, his own mind about what he's saying, but increasingly the criticism I hear from people in Labour is the Prime Minister is just merely, as one of them put it to me, a puppet. You know, I spoke to one Labour MP a few months ago who just said that the Prime Minister just reads whatever is put in front of him, and they point to things such as the Island of Stranger speech, and I'm sure they'll be pointing to last week's PMQs as well. And there were ways in which he could get around it. I mean, you know, he could have done the famous Trump line, we'll see, etc., way of dead-batting questions, but instead by going out there, not in full possession of the facts, I think he's exposed himself, and again, leading Labour MPs questions about his judgment, his direction, and whether he's really leading or simply sort of acting out lines in a play.
Yeah, exactly. So is he going to turn up for this sort of debate today, or is he going to hide out in Downing Street and send one of his, you know, lieutenants out to defend him?
What do you think? I very much suspect that it will not be the Prime Minister who goes. So, you know, in the Tory years, so the Minister for Sticky Wickets, I think that it'll be someone in the Cabinet Office who's going to get that reputation very soon when they'll be sent out to defend him.
Yeah, I mean, that again is kind of gutless, and he won't get himself any brownie points with the party for doing that, will he? Because what he should do is go out there and, you know, own up to what he got wrong, if he did, and just ask for, you know, for the mercy of the court or something.
Well, I think that, you know, a Prime Minister in pursuit of a big majority, etc., can often be quite negligent of the House, and often the House has a way of embarrassing them, as we saw last week. So I think, look, you know, and that's why Keir Starmer last night, I was in the bars, Mike, on the terrace, and he was there shaking hands, trying to make friends with Labour MPs. And you think, well, why weren't you doing this 14 months ago?
Because that was one of the big criticisms of him, wasn't it? That he doesn't do that.
Well, yeah, in the sense that he's very detached from his party, he listens to a core coterie of advisors, and actually his voting record is pretty poor when you compare even to busy prime ministers, you know. I know he's had a lot on the international agenda, but, like, you know, he could have done more outreach. And, for instance, when he sacked the ministers last week, he did it by phone, he didn't do it in person. So by now going around trying to play nice, etc. to those guys, he could have done it, or he could go and save himself a lot of bother.
Right, exactly. And also, he hasn't got much he can sell them nowadays, has he? He's not much. He can't offer them much. I mean, who'd want to be in his government when it's kind of careering off the edge of a cliff?
Well, I mean, this is the thing, is that, you know, Labour MPs just saying, we no one thought it would be this bad. Everyone across the spectrum is saying, you know, 14 years and 14 months is basically what they've got to. And so that loss of goodwill, and also interestingly, an interesting poll that was published last night by Labour List, which is the Labour memberships place, which shows that Bridget Phillipson is 17 points behind Lucy Powell. And I suspect that's entirely due to the fact that she's seen as number 10's candidate. And the point being, Mike, is that if you're seen as number 10's person, you know, that's a bit toxic right now, and that's never a good place for a Prime Minister to be.
Right. And also, a lot of people want to teach him a lesson. I was reading a piece today about how Justin Madders, who I don't know whether you're aware of, was Angela Rayner's enforcer for the Workers' Rights Bill before being axed by Keir Starmer this month, is now chairing Lucy Powell's bid to be deputy leader. So, you know, there's sort of, it's all the ducks are lining up in a row to knife him.
Another one from Greater Manchester. Look, 40% of the casualties last week were from the reshuffle from Greater Manchester in the northwest. Look, I think that he potentially has created a very powerful sort of regional divide there, much like we had Tom Watson against Tony Blair 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. I think you could see the same things happen in the northwest of England.
Yeah, absolutely right. And meanwhile, Paul Ovenden, yet another scandal, has been described as a massive loss to Sir Keir Starmer, albeit that's over some comments that he made some years ago. But people are asking me the question, what on earth is going on in there?
Well, I mean, it depends who you speak to. I think just one of which is just the pace of events has overtaken them. I think also the thing is, it's like when momentum, as Boris Johnson said, when the herd moves, it moves, and so momentum's gone against them and everyone's sort of coming out. Some of them suspect that actually there's a campaign to get key staff, which is why this leaked message has been published from 8 years ago. Yeah. I suspect there's all the politics, circumstance, bad judgments catching up with them. But the key thing, of course, is it's 2 weeks to Labour conference, and I suspect you're going to see remarkably an even more unhappy conference in 2 weeks' time than we saw last year, when it was basically the end of Sue Gray.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. And what about Morgan McSweeney? I mean, people are saying, well, they were saying yesterday, you know, either he goes or Starmer goes, and it's probably going to be Morgan McSweeney, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what is Keir Starmer without Morgan McSweeney? I mean, that is the central question of a lot of commentators, books, etc. I don't know the answer to that, because he once said himself there is no such thing as Starmerism. So I think both men will go down together. Whether it happens now, whether it happens next year, or if they stagger onto the election, remains to be seen.
And what do you make of the Mandelson stories that he's going to wreak revenge for getting sacked because he now thinks that Starmer's completely done him up like a kipper? And I mean, you can imagine he's going to do that. I saw a story yesterday saying that he's going to walk away with about 8 million quid, not from the government, but from some lobbying firm that he's involved with. So he's at least probably going to be able to, you know, keep himself in champagne and slippers for a while. But how's he going to deal with Starmer, do you think?
Well, I mean, vengeance, spite, it doesn't sound like the Dark Lord we all know and love, does it? I mean, look, this is the man known as the Prince of Darkness. I'm just saying there are better people to make enemies out of, and I wonder, you know, I think Peter Mandelson knows where a lot of bodies are buried. Yeah. He's very close to some people at number 10. I think that this is certainly not the end of the story. And some of the briefings last week suggest he's very angry about what's happened.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because he feels like he's been exposed in some way. Let me just finish up with this one in, one out fiasco as well yesterday. Because, I mean, everything they touch at the moment just doesn't really work, does it? They're supposed to be trying to get one person out on a plane to France yesterday. Someone was telling me today that there's a plane coming the other way on Saturday, which is going to be filled with migrants who have been sort of pre-approved to come here. What's not clear is whether, if we don't manage to export any migrants to France, will that plane still come?
I mean, again, what was really interesting about the reports about this is how reticent the French are, and how very much they're emphasising this as an experimental scheme. This isn't the kind of rolling series of flights that is often insinuated by ministers. And as you say, Mike, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be urgent questions on it, or sort of Home Office questions tried before recess. But as you say, I mean, I'm not sure in terms of, you know, once they're here, if we're going to be able to get rid of them. So I do think that we're not going to be able to get the kind of great gains from this deal that some ministers would like us to believe we will.
No, exactly right. And so all of this kind of, we will do everything in our power to stop this ridiculous business going on. Doesn't look like there's anything in their power they can do. But we should watch this space. James, very good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Deputy Political Editor at The Spectator. Bit of breaking news for you. The revised estimate of employees on the payroll in July down 6,000. Provisional estimate for August also down another 8,000. Also, average regular earnings growth fell to 4.8%. Let's get a voice note from Pete.
Seeing as there was a wasted seat on Air France yesterday, or several wasted seats on Air France, couldn't they put them on standby and sell these seats at the airport so we can get some of our tax money back? Because you can be well assured that it's us that's paid for these tickets on Air France to send these illegals back to France. And how come all of a sudden, right, they're allowed back into France? And what if there's no problem with them ones going back? There should be no problem with all of them going back.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the government haven't been in any way transparent about exactly how this system works. They haven't told us who they've detained. They haven't told us under what circumstances they've been detained or why, when they've let so many other people in. 5,600 people have come in since the beginning of August, right, when this whole shebang was announced, this one-in, one-out deal. And they've only somehow detained 100 people. So how does that work? So how come they've let in the other 5,500? Did they all have reasonable reasons for coming here illegally? It's not very clear. And it's also not very clear why some of them have been singled out when others haven't been. We'll see what we can find out from Jack Olson. He's coming up. He's, of course, the political editor at The Sun. We'll find out what's up with him coming next.
I never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. As you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 22 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Katie from North Yorkshire says, Starmer looks like he's got panic in his eyes. Every new clip you show of him, it seems like scandal after scandal at the moment. I can't wait to see what Trump has to say to the UK press and to the man in charge of this country after the big turnout for UTK this past weekend. Have a great day. Yeah, absolutely right. And this one from Pete, who says this, Hi Mike, although we didn't send back that one migrant, the French would have had an approved migrant to send to the UK. Has that approved migrant been sent to the UK anyway? If so, it's none out and another extra one in. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because we know that there's a flight coming in on Saturday, as far as we're aware, from Charles de Gaulle Airport, an Air France flight, which will, we believe, have some new migrants on it, which would be used to exchange for the other migrants who will be going from here to there. But if we don't end up sending any from here to there, what we don't know is whether or not they'll end up coming anyway. In which case, we've got even more migrants than we thought we had. Jack Elsom's here, police guys here at The Sun. Jack, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Great piece in the paper today.
Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, I wrote that piece in the afternoon, and I had to sort of...
I was just getting another call to turn my camera around the right way.
That's starting to confuse me. You're not in number 10, are you?
Right, there we go.
No, that's good. That's it.
Right, fantastic.
It's good, man. Yeah, I mean, I had to sort of hazard a guess at the sort of mid-afternoon whether or not anybody would actually leave, you know, given that the government had said we will be starting these deportations today. And I took a guess that by the end of the piece, nobody would go. And as it turned out, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, no, totally right. I mean, Labour's words are really coming back to bite them now, aren't they? You know, when they were in opposition, hitting out the Tories' Rwanda plan, they said it was a gimmick. It increasingly looks like this is a gimmick. They said it could never be scaled up. I mean, this isn't even going to touch the size. You mentioned in your piece we have a backlog of about 120,000 asylum seekers in this country. Yeah. If we send back only a few dozen to France, then that is not even, a small fraction of the overall numbers coming here. And that's not even to mention the droves coming over across the Channel every single week. And they also said that the Rwandans would be hit by human rights challenges. And look what we've got last night, last minute, 11th hour human rights challenges, which has mean that the migrant had to be hauled off the plane. I mean, what does that say about our legal system? You know, this migrant came across about a month ago from France. Yeah. Safe country. He's been in Britain for about a month. And now suddenly there's human rights claims, which mean that he can stay. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. The part of the state of our legal system, I think, just needs absolute overwhelming reform. And at the moment, it doesn't look like Labour is serious about that.
No, exactly right, because they're supposed to have got this deal done with France, which was supposed to be sort of groundbreaking, and they made a big song and dance about it. You know, nothing can stop it. But I spoke to a lawyer yesterday who I quote in the piece, Ivan Sampson, who basically said it's practically incoherent and legally frail, and it will end up costing the government actually a load of money defending cases in court and losing.
Yeah, and this is it. And unless you have serious reform of Article 8 of the ECHR and Article 3 of the ECHR, then these legal challenges are just going to keep on coming. It's in the lawyer's interest to do it because obviously most of them get paid to mount these challenges in the courts. And it's just going to bind up the Labour government, just as it did the Tory government. I think that Keir Starmer, despite being a mass defender of human rights laws, as a former human rights lawyer himself, will eventually come to the realisation that this is the only way to seriously solve this crisis. But like the previous government, they might only realise this before it's too late. And I think that there are people even inside the Labour Party now that are imploring Number 10 to go much further, much faster and much tougher on this migration crisis because they know it is the probably single biggest issue on which their re-election chances live or die. Yeah. And at the moment, it doesn't seem that has really jolted Keir Starmer and Number 10 into some sort of action. You know, they say that this will break the smuggling gang's business model. Well, it won't break the smuggling gang's business model if there is still a massive incentive to come across the Channel because the numbers and the chance that you're being returned is so small.
Exactly.
You know, it's about a 95% chance that you will stay under this deal. And so if you were across the Channel looking at all of the shiny benefits, hotels, perks that you can get in Britain, then you'll probably take those odds. And so I think the real deterrent here would be some sort of third country processing point, as other parties have said, where as soon as you land on these shores, you are detained, and within a week you are off in another country having your asylum claims processed. And until that really happens, and Keir Starmer has said he's looking at them, why is he just looking at them? Why is he not actually implementing them at the moment? Because at the moment, there's no time to lose.
Because exactly right. I mean, it was one thing for human rights lawyers to stop people being sent to Rwanda, and one thing to say, it's not a safe country. But they're stopping them going to France now, and you're kind of going, well, hang on a minute. Why is France a problem? Why is that not? Why it's not a dangerous country?
No, exactly. And this has been the sort of the fast throughout the migration crisis that's gripped the country over the past 7 or so years, the fact that they are coming from this safe country in France. And you're right, the amount of sort of legal wrangling in the House of Commons it took to be able to pass a bill to declare Rwanda a safe country. No one would have thought that sending migrants back to France would be any sort of issue whatsoever. No. But, again, I don't really think it's in Macron's interest to actually try and grease the wheels on this. And you saw the French Interior Ministry a few days ago really downplaying this scheme and saying, listen, it's only very small scale, it's only for a time-limited period, so if we don't get any benefit, then we can stop it. Because I think the prospect of flights going back down to France aren't helpful to Macron. It's not really in his interest, I don't think, by those images coming out. And so I don't think that he's being entirely helpful either. But listen, the problem is that it shouldn't even really, in the first place, I know we've got this deal, but it shouldn't even really be down to France to police our borders. No. And that is what most people are saying. If we're a sovereign country and an island nation, then we can stop this happening. And that is why someone like Reform UK have managed to gain a massive traction in the polls, because they are just saying that as soon as they step foot on British soil, they will be deported immediately. And I think that is what most of the country think. You could talk about lawyers, you could talk about schemes, you can talk about deterrence. When most right-minded people, and your viewers and my readers, look at this crisis, they just go, why can't we just stop it? We're an island. And that is, I think, the crux which Number 10 really need to reflect.
They do. But, of course, they're very distracted at the moment, and they've been distracted for quite a long time because of the scandal now surrounding the whole Peter Mandelson situation. I want to ask you about that as well, because let me play you this. This is from Keir Starmer yesterday, unusually going out and actually giving an interview, generally all round to broadcast. And this is why he said material was not presented to him.
You say not everybody had seen every email, but people at the top of the Foreign Office were in possession of some of the very material which you say was so unacceptable.
Well, look, in retrospect, it would have been better if I had been shown the details of the material before PMQs. Nonetheless...
The bits that were in Whitehall already.
Well, in retrospect...
Why weren't you?
It would have been better if I had seen that
You must have wondered
material.
this.
Well, the team were busy trying to get answers out of Peter Mandelson, which they hadn't got answers
And you're sure they weren't just working, as it were, for Peter Mandelson, trying to protect his reputation a bit when they should have been protecting yours?
No. I've seen the questions that government officials put to Peter Mandelson. I've seen the response he gave to those.
You think he was obfuscating?
Well, what I'd just say about those questions, they were the right questions, in my view, and they were waiting for Peter to reply. So they didn't know what his reply was going to be any more than I did. But look, if you're asking me now, days on, would it have been better if more of this material had been brought expressly to my attention? Then yes, it would have been.
It sort of beggars belief that he's making an excuse that he didn't see something. He's the Prime Minister. Surely he gets the right to see whatever he wants, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that excuse just really doesn't fly. And the timeline of the events which led up to Peter Mandelson's sacking have had to be dragged from Number 10, like blood out of the stone. And as more pieces of the jigsaw have been filled in, it gets more damning and more damning.
Right.
Keir Starmer knew when he stood at the dispatch box at lunchtime on Wednesday and defended Peter Mandelson and said he retained full confidence in Peter Mandelson. One, he knew, because Peter Mandelson gave an interview to my colleague Harry Cole, that Peter Mandelson himself had admitted that more embarrassing emails and correspondence between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein would be coming out. He also knew that the Foreign Office were in possession of those emails because Bloomberg had contacted them for a right of reply. He knew that on Wednesday morning. So why on earth, before going into the House of Commons, did he not think to ask, actually, maybe I should find out the precise nature of these emails, right, bearing in mind we already know Peter Mandelson's murky relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein? Why did he not then go and seek the actual contents of those emails before he stood up at 12 o'clock last Wednesday and said, I'm sticking by this guy, because now the whole thing either looks like his judgment and lack of curiosity is astounding, or his advisors have seriously let him down, although, you know, the buck stops to the top and he can demand, like you said, to see anything that he wants, or it looks like some massive cover-up in which we're really not being told the express truth of this. And so, you know, that is, I think, really damaging. And when you make statements in the House of Commons, you have to be really careful. I know it might seem sort of trivial to everyone, but, you know, this is basically what brought down Boris Johnson. The fact that, you know, he was economical with the truth in the House of Commons. Right. And so, you know, these things have to be taken really seriously. And, you know, I think good on the Tories who are actually managing to keep this going. It seems to be sort of the only cut through they've got in recent months. Yeah. But, you know, they are actually managing to extract some answers out of the government. And, you know, likely we're going to see a minister squirm at the dispatch box today in this 3-hour emergency debate, which has been granted by the Speaker.
And there's no question about Keir Starmer's sort of inexactitude, if you want to be kind, about some of the answers he gives when he's in the Commons. I had Kemi Badenoch in here a couple of months ago, and I asked her, I said, you know, why is it that he doesn't answer questions? And she said, quite frankly, I think a lot of the time he doesn't know the answer, and other times he just wants to sort of obfuscate and not give the right answer because it's too damning against him. And when I asked her if she thought that he was a liar, she said, yeah, that's what he is, you know. And unfortunately, that's his kind of, that's the heritage leading up to this moment. So he's now hiding behind the idea that, you know, because of the time difference, Peter Mandelson hadn't answered the questions that he'd been asked, and so he didn't have that information when he went into PMQs, which is unforgivable, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's incumbent on him now, if he wants to be transparent, to just release every single ounce of detail about this scandal. Bring forward the contents of what exactly you knew before you went into PMQs, what your advisors were telling you about what was in those Peter Mandelson emails, the assurances that government officials were currently seeking from Peter Mandelson, the exact timeline of when Peter Mandelson responded to those emails by the minute. Yeah. If you give us that information, the public can judge for themselves whether or not Keir Starmer was fully aware of what he was doing when he went into Prime Minister's questions last week. And I think that for a man who made such a play about standards in public life when he was running to be Prime Minister, when he was in opposition, always being the first out of the traps to criticise any sort of sleaze under the Tories, I think it's incumbent on him now to put his money where his mouth is and really lay down the full facts of this case so the public can judge for themselves.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what he has to do. But he's certainly not out of the woods for a while, is he?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's sort of been questions around Keir Starmer's future, many on the Labour left giving him until May, where it looks like there's going to be some pretty abysmal local elections for them across the country, but also in Scotland and Wales. It's a difficult one because I think that the Parliamentary Labour Party are notoriously quite reluctant to get rid of their leaders. They obviously tried with Jeremy Corbyn and failed because ultimately it goes down to the Labour membership. There are still, despite the soundings off from many people on the, sort of the Labour left and the soft left, there are still a lot of the Parliamentary Party which are loyal to Keir Starmer. Most of them, you know, being given now sort of government jobs, baubles, PPS jobs. You know, the sort of the bag carrier class in Parliament has never been so big because everyone's now got some sort of position to keep them sweet. And I think that is a tactic in trying to bring as many people inside the tent as possible. But there are still lots of people who are loyal to Keir Starmer. But, you know, as every scandal goes on, it just gets worse and worse. And I said this yesterday, but, you know, I think that all governments have scandals of all stripes, but it's one, how you react to it, but also they could be more forgivable if everything else was going right. Yeah. If you had a big poll lead, which they don't, if the economy was firing on all cylinders, which it's not, if illegal migration was under control, which it's not. But the fact that you have this sense of drift in terms of policy and delivery in the government just exposes Keir Starmer even more when he's hit by a scandal like this.
Yeah, absolutely right. Jack, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Jack Elson there, political editor at The Sun. This from David in Cheshire. Mike, my blood is boiling. How many times is Starmer going to play the culpable deniability card to save his skin? He's done it 4 times now. Sorry, I didn't read Rayner's tax details. Sorry, I didn't see the Southport riot file. Sorry, I didn't know about the Lucy Connolly case. Starmer is the most self-serving man I have ever seen or heard of. Get him out of politics. Get this arrogant buffoon out now. Well, I mean, that's about as strong as you can put it, I think, and a lot of people would agree that Keir Starmer has made an absolute sort of living out of denying things that he clearly could not deny if he was put in front of a proper journalist asking proper questions. You know, like when he said he wasn't familiar with Lucy Connolly's case, the details of it. Do me a favour. You know, it was only all over the press for months and months and months on end. Absolutely extraordinary. Let's have a look at what's going on the Sun Letters page.
Letters from the Sun, the page where you tell Britain what to think. For more, visit thesun.co.uk.
This from Adam in Gateshead in Tyne Weir. David Wooding's description of Keir Starmer as a lame duck PM is an understatement. But Starmer's Labour colleagues are equally to blame for the country's woes. Rachel Reeves' decisions as Chancellor have brought Britain to its knees. They have absolutely no chance of winning a second term. And one from Ian in Wigan, who says, Keir Starmer says the UK will never surrender the British flag to the far right. Well, if he took off his blinkered spectacles, he would have seen thousands of ordinary family members of all ages waving the flag around the streets of London. If this does not send a message to him, then he is more deluded than I thought. Keir Starmer, please stand down for the sake of the country. And Barry in Sunderland says, will we see the airport stacked with planes full of illegal migrants flying out of the country? I think not. If any were flown out to France, they would probably send them straight back to the coast, one in, one out, and the same one back in again. Exactly right. There's nothing like this one in, one out policy. It doesn't work. It won't work. It can never work. Let's get a voice note from Scotty.
Hello, Mike. It's Scotty from Tamworth here. My take on this migrant boats is that the Royal Navy are responsible for the protection of this country at the high seas. So what I would do, I would send out the Royal Marines in landing crafts, intercept the small boats, load them onto the landing craft, take them back to the beaches in France, drop them off and say, have a nice day.
Indeed. That's been suggested in the past and certainly would seem to be a better idea than this one in, one out nonsense, which clearly is never going to be a workable plan at all. Scotty, thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to speak to Callum McGoldrick from Taxpayers Alliance. They put out a very funny and interesting roundup of Quangos yesterday, and we're going to find out exactly how much money is being wasted on all of these ridiculous organisations that don't seem to do anything. It's more money down the drain, I'm afraid. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 8:42. Goodness me, the time is really flying. Mike, number 10 could stop legal aid to all asylum seekers. They could stop benefits to them too, and that would stop the boats instantly, says Mike in North Staffordshire. Yeah, probably. And Derek says, morning, Mike, get Donald to run the country for a week. As he's here, he will deport the freaking lot in a few days. I bet you he would, and he wouldn't care about the ECHR either, by the way. Let's talk now, though, to Callum McGoldrick, researcher at Taxpayers Alliance, because yesterday they came out with a fascinating little roundup of Quango itis that we seem to have in this country. Loads and loads of Quangos, which get started up. Funnily enough, every time we hear there's going to be a bonfire of the Quangos, there turns out to be even more Quangos created. Callum, very good morning to you.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thanks a lot for joining us. In 2023-24, 438 Quangos collectively accounted for £391 billion in public expenditure. I mean, it's not a small amount of money, this. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
No, it's not. And out of the taxpayer-funded income, it stood at 376 billion, which is greater than the GDP of Norway.
That's incredible.
So when you look at the amount taxpayers fund these two, it's insane.
And they've got 500,000 people working there as well. And nobody really knows what most of them do you?
I don't think they know what a lot of them do. I think the ones that do know what they do end up just creating more and more regulation that hamper the economy, that stop growth, that make life very, very difficult for a lot of businesses. I think when you look at the total workforce, as you said, 500,000, that's roughly the population of Liverpool we have working for Quangos.
Right. And I mean, a lot of the people that end up working for these Quangos are kind of, you know, failed politicians, failed researchers, failed, you know, think tank members who get laid off. It's a kind of jobs for the boys and girls scenario, isn't it?
A lot of the time it is, yeah. I think you look at the amount of growth that they cause, I'm not sure it's any. I think all as they do, from people I talk to, from people I see, is that they create a lot of headaches for businesses without adding much value to them.
And it's unaudited to a large extent, a lot of the money, the way it's spent, isn't it?
Well, they're meant to be responsible to a government ministry, but if you look at somewhere like the DCMS, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, they're responsible for 41 Quangos. It's simply impossible that they can oversee what each one does on a day-to-day basis.
And what, I mean, can you give us an example of one of these 41 Quangos? What's the most ridiculous one, would you say?
I think Homes England, they're set up with a mission to increase homes in the UK, and yet all as they seem to do is wish to block planning permission for more homes.
Right.
So they do the exact opposite of what they're meant to do.
And Homes England, why would you even need them?
Well, it's a good question. I think before they were created, I don't think Britain was struggling to build homes, yet it seems they come along and then all of a sudden we can't do it anymore.
Right. And it will come as no surprise to know that the man that created the most Quangos of any Prime Minister in the history of Quangos is, of course, Tony Blair.
Yeah, Tony Blair with 92, that's roughly one every 6 weeks he was in office.
Right.
But I think, to be fair, you look at, you mentioned the bonfire of the Quangos, that was a phrase coined by David Cameron. He made 54 of them. So, you know, it was really a problem from both major political parties for that.
And I was saying that, generally speaking, when people come in and say, we're going to have a bonfire of the Quangos, somehow, miraculously, more get created and none get destroyed.
Yeah, it's a problem that both political parties have struggled with. I think earlier you were mentioning Keir Starmer. The reason why is that a lot of the time they can outsource responsibility. It means when a problem goes wrong, they can say, oh, it's the Quangos' fault, no, not mine, don't look at mine. But obviously that's a very hollow answer a lot of the time. I think, well, you're the elected official, you are ultimately the one responsible, why don't you take accountability yourself?
Right. And one of the Quangos that you've listed here is the NHS England Quango, which seems to be in receipt of an awful lot of money. 175. It says 175 billion here, does it? That can't be right. But NHS England has supposedly been abolished now, hasn't it?
No, that is correct. 175 billion went to NHS England because they then managed the expenditure given to all of the trusts.
Wow.
They have been abolished in name, but I'm sure that all that will happen is that all of their staff will move over to the Department of Health, along with all of their expenditure. So it's a classic Labour tactic of changing the name of something, but keeping all of the expenditure and all of the staff on payroll.
Right. And Network Rail is another one from the Department of Transport, 17 billion for them. I mean, they're supposedly in charge of the railway, aren't they, in terms of the actual railway lines themselves? But again, why do they need that sort of money?
Well, it's a great question. I think not many people know, and as more and more networks are getting nationalised, I'm sure their power will only grow. I doubt we'll see much service improvements as a result.
Yeah, it is quite extraordinary, isn't it? And the BBC is down as a Quango as well, so they've got 5 billion, I think, from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. Is that right? Is the BBC technically a Quango?
Yeah, well, this data set uses the Cabinet Office's arm's length bodies list. So we don't include things like NHS trusts,
Right.
which could be classed as a Quango. We only include things that the Cabinet Office themselves do admit are Quangos.
Right. Wow, I didn't even think of the BBC as a Quango. That explains an awful lot. Listen, great to talk to you, Callum. Thank you very much indeed. Callum McGoldrick there from the Taxpayers Alliance. Incredible list, actually. I can guarantee that you should have a look at it, because you'll be quite remarkably shocked, I suspect, about the most ridiculous amount of money which goes out to all manner of different parts of this country, and so many public sector organisations and so many Quangos. You know, how about this? The British Council, the Financial Conduct Authority, Network Rail, as I said, the Environment Agency, Defence Equipment and Support, Sellafield Limited, the Police Service of Northern Ireland. It just goes on and on and on. Billions and billions and billions of pounds. For what? Exactly. Incredible. How about this, Mike? If we have around 110,000 asylum seeker applications pending, then apparently it's the same amount of people we saw on Saturday's rally. Yeah, that was what Isabel Oakeshott said yesterday. It kind of went around the world, that one, because it was quite an interesting comparison. Let's talk about Harry Colo, who is, of course, the Sun's editor-at-large. He did his show last night right here, Harry Cole Saves the West, and this is the exclusive that came out of it. He spoke to the top Jeffrey Epstein inquisitor, whose name is James Comer. He's a top Republican congressman, and he's basically vowed to make public any communication or financial information involving the Duke of York. He's going to unearth it amongst tens of thousands of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, and he's basically put Prince Andrew on notice. Have a look at this.
Just to be clear, you're not disputing the reports that there are up to 100 emails possibly discovered involving Prince Andrew. I just need to pick you on that point.
Well, we're going to be transparent with everything that we find. When we get documents, and we've had the estate turn over 2 batches of documents, we've had the Department of Justice turn over 32,000 pages of documents. We put a lot of those online. People can go through and look at those.
Do you promise to release any information regarding Prince Andrew should it cross your desk?
Yes, anything we get on that, we will release.
Congressman, I'm going to have one more go. Will we see anything about Prince Andrew in the next tranche of the Epstein files? Before you go on, yes or no?
Probably not in the next batch, but
not never.
Yeah. If he's involved in, if his name's mentioned, you'll see it.
Well, I wonder if we'll get any more on Peter Mandelson while we're at it. Harry Cole, of course, saves the West every single night, 10 o'clock Monday to Thursday, right here on Talk, and it's also available on YouTube. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 9. Can't believe the time is going so fast. We've got lots more to do. Keep your calls coming in. Keep your voice notes as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. As you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It is 8:53. We're here with you, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. Isn't it a strange concept, says Natasha, that a government will only want to stop the migrants to save themselves at the next election rather than for the good of the country and for us citizens? And Carl says, how many times will Starmer use the excuse that never crossed my desk? He takes responsibility for nothing. I know, he does seem to try and get away with almost everything, doesn't he? Right now, though, let's take a little change of tack because it's time to do 90 minutes in 90 seconds with The Sun.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
And Rob Moore is here, Associate Sports Features Editor at The Sun. Rob, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Good to see you. Return of the Champions League tonight. That'll be very exciting for an awful lot of people, especially Arsenal and Tottenham fans.
Yeah, for the first time, there's 6 Premier League sides in the Champions League. This is because Chelsea won Europa Conference League at the end of last season. And there's 3 clubs from London, which I think is the first time it's ever happened for one city. So Arsenal playing away to Atletico Bilbao. Quite poignant for Mikel Arteta, the boss, because he was born in the Basque Country. He played for their rivals, Real Sociedad, and that's at 5:45 today. And it's this new Swiss League, Mike, that we've had for the 2nd year running. We've got 36 teams. And, yeah, it gets a bit samey after a while, but there's some really good fixtures to kick off with. And then Tottenham play Villarreal, which is quite ironic given that Ange Postecoglou qualified them for the Champions League, and he's not the one taking them into the competition because he got sacked. So it's Thomas Frank tonight making his debut for them in European football. And then tomorrow we've got Bayern Munich-Chelsea, memories of that final from 2012. We've got Liverpool-Atletico Madrid tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we've got Man City-Napoli, which is Kevin De Bruyne coming back to the Etihad, and Scott McTominay as well coming back to Manchester. And we've also got Newcastle-Barcelona, which has memories of that tremendous match from 1997 when Kevin Keegan was in
what a great week for European football. It's like you died and gone to heaven. And then the league is a bit weird, though, isn't it, as you say? How does it work exactly?
Yeah, there's 36 teams, and you play 8 times, so you're not playing the same team home and away as you used to in a group stage. It used to be 8 groups of 4, and then of course they have a certain number of teams qualify automatically for the last 16. There's a small section of the teams then play into a playoff, which is an additional 2 matches in January, which of course any team wants to avoid. They don't want to play extra matches. You have to get a long way to get to the knockout stage. It's great for European administrators, great for TV, not so great for fans necessarily because a lot of expense. However, you are getting, for example, if you're a Chelsea fan, going to Munich. If you're an Arsenal fan, you're going to Bilbao. So there's a bit more travel to far-flung places. I preferred the old system, if I'm honest, just because you knew who you were playing, you could book it up early. But that said, UEFA, it's almost a European Super League, Mike, isn't it? Which we were talking about 4 or 5 years ago. This is what UEFA have created. And to have 6 Premier League sides, no Man United, of course.
I was going to say, no Man United in 6 Premier League sides. That's pretty embarrassing for them, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's quite ironic. Sheffield Wednesday are playing Grimsby tonight. And the reason I mention that's in the League Cup, is that had Man United beaten Grimsby, they would have been playing at Hillsborough tonight in the 3rd round of the League Cup. So the fact they're not even playing that, they're having a training week, shows how far they have fallen. I mean, back in the 90s, when I was growing up watching on ITV, Clive Tilsley and everything, it was Man United pretty much every
Yeah.
other week, wasn't it? On Champions League, it
Yeah.
was Fergie trying to win that trophy, which he did in 1999. And they've just fallen so far behind now. It's one of their worst seasons in the Premier League. And they're not involved, are they? They're not even involved in the League Domestic Cup at the moment.
No.
So it's the real fall from
Shocking.
grace.
Shocking state of affairs. Rob, great to see you. It's a great plan that you've got for us. Thank you very much indeed. Rob Moore, Associate Sports Features Editor at The Sun. That was 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
Let's talk to James, who's in Staffordshire, who wants to talk about one in, one out. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. It's a pleasure to talk to you. The first time I've spoken to you.
Good to hear from you. What can I do for you, sir?
It's only a very quick question. I'm curious as to how many ambulance-chasing human rights lawyers are sitting in France trying to stop the plane that's going to be landing in Britain on Saturday?
Well, that's a very good question. I suspect a very low number, possibly zero.
Yes. Yeah. Somehow you don't seem to think that, well, you know, they have the right to stay in their little tent in Calais, so you know, that's their human right to do so. I find the ECHR part of this absolutely laughable.
Yeah, it really is. Also, you know, how on earth can anybody stand up in a court of law and say that it's against somebody's human rights to be sent to France? You know?
Well, war-torn France, that place is hell. I don't holiday there at least once or twice, you know, every couple of years.
Yeah.
You know, because the conditions are so... It makes Gaza look like a pleasure palace.
I know. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Absolutely mad. James, good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. Luke from just outside of Blackburn says this. Great show, as always. Something I don't understand about the illegal migrants that throw their documents into the Channel. Surely their last known country of origin would be France. As such, they should be assumed as being from there and returned there until the French can prove otherwise. Well, I think that's a good point. And morning, Mike. Great show, says Woody in Melton Mowbray. About these refugees coming in on my aircraft at the weekend. Why don't they just stick them on several coaches and stick them on a normal ferry? Surely that's going to be cheaper. All the best. Well, you would think so, wouldn't you? I don't know why they're flying them. I don't see what the advantage is of that. And if you're on a plane with some of these people, you're not going to be too happy, are you? But so far, no good. None out. They've stayed here. They've decided they want to go. Don't fancy France, I'm afraid. Coming up in the next hour, we've got loads. Mel Stride joins us, Annabelle Denham from The Telegraph as well, and Steve Baker, the Tory, will be here.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Gray, 3 minutes past 9. It is, of course, Tuesday, the 16th of September. And it is rather a fine-looking day out there. Not a cloud in the sky, blue skies, in fact, which probably means be a load of migrants coming over on the small boats. Well, there won't be as any migrants going back on any planes. That's they're supposed to be doing, as per the one in, one out. It was supposed to begin yesterday, but unfortunately, despite Shabana Mahmood, the new Home Secretary's pledge to do everything in her power to send all these people back, they tried to send one guy back, and it didn't happen. They didn't make it. I'm afraid he got a lawyer, and so he's now still in Britain, and they're going to try and send him out again today on another Air France jet, probably without much success, one would imagine. Even if they do send out all the people they've managed to detain so far, that would be about 100 versus 5,500 and something since have come in since August the 5th, since this announcement was actually made. Ridiculous state of affairs. I've got a piece in The Sun explaining why, with a 120,000 backlog, if they're running it at this kind of pace, even if they were able to be successful, they would take years and years and years to deport all the people who are already here illegally. It's absolutely extraordinary. Coming up in this hour, Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, is going to join us. Keir Starmer very much on the rocks and on the ropes, according to a piece in the Daily Telegraph. Annabel Denham is here from their comment section, because apparently Donald Trump's coming this afternoon, early evening, into Stansted Airport. He's going to begin a second state visit with very much Keir Starmer wounded, like a wounded beast under a cloud, with no friends left in Downing Street, desperately trying to explain how he managed not to know that Peter Mandelson had a very close relationship with the paedophile, the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, even to the extent of sending him emails saying that he should challenge his convictions on child sex charges that put him in prison. That still didn't matter to Starmer, apparently. He didn't realise it was quite as bad as that when he made him ambassador to the United States of America. He's now been fired, of course. Today, there's going to be a big debate in Parliament for 3 hours, which has begun by David Davis, Tory MP, who wants to find out exactly what Starmer knew, exactly when he knew it, and precisely what the Labour government is going to do about the uselessness that they seem to find themselves in. They're in a kind of death spiral. Everything they touch turns to the opposite of gold. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Daily Mail calls it meltdown. Starmer's socialist utopia is in a very, very bad place. They've also had to lose another key number 10 aide who quit over some vile slurs around Diane Abbott some years ago. This is Morning Glory, though. Let's get it on. Five minutes past 9. This from Stephanie, who says, Mike, what a joke. How have we sent back 35,000 migrants when they can't deport one to France? It's a very good point. And Simon in the southwest says, one in, one out is a complete failure already. Rwanda was far better as people were going to Southern Ireland instead. That cost 800 million. This Labour government has paid 750 million quid to France, and for what exactly? Well, who can say? Let's get a voice note from Alan.
Morning, Mike. Alan from Swansea, yeah? Oh, dear. Every time I get up, buddy, and it's just the same old. When is enough with this character? We've had his poor judgment appointing ministers out of the depth. Remember the homeless minister making people homeless? Anti-corruption minister, Angela Rayner, with the 3 houses farce. The immigration, one in, one out. That just doesn't work. That doesn't make sense. And now this Mandelson farce. Blaming, not me, sir, it was him, sir. I didn't know this, didn't know nothing. His hideous incompetence is unbelievable. And gaslighting us every day, we are sick of him. When is enough? He's got to go and get my country back. Keep up the great show, buddy.
Alan, very well said. I'm sure that you will find that many, many people listening to this show, watching it today, feel exactly as you do. This one from... where is he? Peter from Seaham Harbour. That Starmer interview last night reminded me of the Prince Andrew interview, both done for by Epstein. And Vince says, Mike, Starmer didn't know about Jimmy Savile, didn't know about grooming gangs, didn't know about Mandelson. Yeah, didn't know about Lucy Connolly either, apparently, when he was asked about that. Mel Stride is here, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Mel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
It's like your Christmases have come all at once in the last couple of weeks, isn't it?
Well, I think we've been a very effective opposition, which is what we're there to do. So we've got this emergency debate this afternoon to press the government to provide the information around what the Prime Minister knew when he stood up at the dispatch box at Prime Minister's questions and defended Peter Mandelson and his relationship with a convicted paedophile. We've also put a lot of pressure on Angela Rayner over her tax affairs, and she has now stepped down. And of course we're doing the hard yards, Mike, around things like illegal migration, holding the government to account there, and on the economy. So yeah, we're very busy and we're, you know, making progress.
Yeah, what about this afternoon's debate though? Because David Davis has sort of organised for it to happen. Obviously it's very much something that you guys want to do. But can you compel the Prime Minister to come? And if you can't, why won't he come?
Well, so what we're actually seeking to do through this 3-hour debate is to require and get the government to provide the information, the correspondence, the emails, etc., around what happened before the Prime Minister stood up at Prime Minister's questions. Because what we know is that on Tuesday, a lot of information, the Bloomberg email to Peter Mandelson setting out some of his correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein. We know that that information was in Downing Street on Monday. It must have been being looked at by the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, and the questions have got to be asked as if the Prime Minister didn't know the full details, and why didn't he get to know them before he stood up? Or if he did know the full details, why on earth did he stand by Peter Mandelson at the dispatch box?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense, does it? Let's have a look at what he said yesterday on the timeline of what Number 10 knew.
It was only on Wednesday early evening that I knew the contents of the Bloomberg emails. It was only very late on Wednesday when Peter Mandelson replied to the questions that had been put to him by government officials. And it was on that basis that I took my decision that he should be removed. What I knew before PMQs was that there had been media inquiries. I didn't know the content of the Bloomberg emails. And I knew that questions had been put to Peter that he had not yet answered. And he hadn't answered them by the time it got to PMQs. There is, of course, a time lag in America, but I knew that there are questions that have been put to him, but I didn't know what answers he was going to give to those questions. That came later on Wednesday. And that's why, at that point, I gave the answer I did at PMQs, and that's the extent of what I knew at the time.
I mean, I don't find that to be a credible answer. I don't know about you, Mel, but, you know, the idea that he understood that some questions had been put to Peter Mandelson, but he didn't know what he'd said by way of answering them because there's a time difference. I mean, it's effectively what he's saying.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The point is, I think, that the Prime Minister there just said he wasn't aware of the content of the emails, although he was aware of their existence. So, in other words, 24 hours or so before he stands up at the dispatch box to stand by Peter Mandelson, he's saying he knew this information was there. Well, why on earth didn't he get his officials, if it didn't happen, why on earth did he not get them to come forward and explain exactly what was in those emails so that he could then make that judgment before standing up at Prime Minister's question? You know, Peter Mandelson, Mike, was out on the airways at 8:10 the morning of that Wednesday morning before Prime Minister's question, saying that there was more to come, effectively. You know, it was very clear that he should have done proper due diligence on this, and either kind of knew and just thought he could brazen it out, or a terrible lack of judgment in not pressing to get answers earlier.
And other ministers have been out and about saying basically that Labour government officials and ministers didn't know any more about anything to do with Epstein and Mandelson than the press did. I mean, you've been in government, surely that's not true.
Yeah, I find that very far-fetched. There would be a lot of information that the Foreign Office and the Embassy and Number 10 would have been looking at, questions that would have been answered. This would have been an iterative and interactive process with more information becoming available through time. The reality is that there's just been, as I say, very poor judgment here. And, you know, a final point I would make on this, Mike, or another point, is that Prime Ministers really prep for Prime Minister's questions, okay? It's one of those events during the week that's a big event. Everybody watches it. And the idea that he could have been in that situation, knowing he's going to get 6 hard questions from Kemi Badenoch, and she was brilliant, incidentally, on the day, and not fully appraise himself of what was going on here, I just think kind of beggars belief, really.
Well, it does, because any answer to whatever the question will be to him this afternoon is a bad one for him, you know, and I don't know where you go from there.
Well, I mean, there's now calls for the Prime Minister to step down, and a lot of those calls, of course, are coming from within his own party. His own party is very demoralised. They've got this huge majority, but they don't seem to be capable of a coherent and planned approach to running government or the economy or stopping you know, illegal migration that's now running at record levels. And it's because it's all rather chaotic at the centre. That's the problem.
Do you think he should step down?
I think there's a very strong argument for him doing that. I think we need to, though, really get to the bottom of what exactly has happened, and that's why this debate today is so important. And if in the event of looking at that information, or a select committee looking at that information, it's concluded that there was any misleading of the House or anything of that nature, then certainly.
Thank you very much indeed. Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. There's only one place this all ends up, I think, isn't there? Annabel Denham's here, Deputy Comment Editor from The Telegraph. Annabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Seems extraordinary that, you know, this demise of Keir Starmer has happened quite so quickly. I mean, I've been saying for a long time that I don't think he'll last the pace. I don't think he'll last until certainly any 2029 election. I don't know if he's going to last now the year, but it seems to have accelerated. His demise has kind of cataclysmically reached a point very, very fast in the past 2 weeks.
It certainly has. The timeline for his demise has been accelerated substantially. And let's not forget, Mike, that he came back after the summer promising about his 9th reset. It was the government moving into phase 2. It was all about delivery, having apparently fixed the foundations. Well, if you look at pretty much any data point when it comes to the economy, it's worse than it was when they came into power. So I'm not quite sure which foundations they've been repairing. And it's all just gone from bad to worse in the intervening period. But let's not forget that over the last 14 months, we've had, you know...
Attention, please.
I apologise, I've got...
Attention, please.
Oh. Thought you were getting one of those alerts. Sorry, go on. Oh, I think she's frozen. We'll come back to her in a moment. No, are you all right? It looks frozen to me. We'll come back to it. Rodders is like the little kid who's eaten all the chocolate, says Michael, and it's all around his face, and you ask him, did you eat the chocolate? And he says, no. That's what it's like. I've dealt with many compulsive, duplicitous people, says Mick. Starmer is a classic case of a man spinning in a barrel of falsehoods and panic. Morning, Mike, says Brian. Starmer said outside number 10 on day 1, country first. Well, he should put the country first now and resign. I think that is really very, very interesting, what people are now saying about Keir Starmer and how awful he has been and is becoming, and how quickly the floor seems to be kind of falling away around him. Morning, Mike. The government is just a game of brag. Keir Starmer is a busted flush. His MPs were a run on the bounce. The immigration department is a full house. There are no aces, and it's full of jokers, says John in Blackpool. Yeah, thanks very much indeed. And they're playing blind, I think, as well. That's the problem. We'll take a little break and come back with Annabel Denham.
never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. As you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 20 minutes past 9, and we are here, of course, until 10 o'clock. This one from Bernard, who says, hello, Mike. The illegal migrants should be sent back the same way they came in. Well, you would think that somebody could come up with a plan, wouldn't you? Mike, how come there are no right-wing human rights lawyers, says Ernie? It would be nice to have at least one to argue our case at these appeals. The law seems a bit one-sided. Yeah, particularly since most of the judges appear to be left-wing as well. Let's go back, though, to Annabel Denham. I think we've managed to sort out whatever the little glitch was. Deputy Comment Editor, of course, at The Telegraph. Annabel, how are you?
I'm very well, Mike. I'm back.
Good, excellent. We were just talking about how speedy the demise of Starmer has been over the last couple of weeks. You know, it sort of started, I guess, with Angela Rayner. He got up and said he had full confidence in her on the Wednesday. By the Friday, she was gone, no longer deputy leader, no longer running the Department of Housing, Communities and Levelling Up. And then last week, even more bizarrely, he comes out to bat for Peter Mandelson and then sacks him the next day.
Well, it's just been 2 weeks of very, very poor political judgment from Keir Starmer. And what it's done is lead people to believe not that he's going to hang on until 2029, even if it's by his fingernails, but actually suggest that he may not even make it to the local elections in May. It was previously thought, including by some Labour backbenchers, that if he had a poor performance then, that might trigger a leadership contest. But it now seems as though he may not even see out the rest of 2025 because things are just going that badly. And it's hardly as though before the past fortnight things were going particularly well. I mean, if you look at who he's had to sack or who has resigned from this administration, this government, Andrew Gwynn, Mike Ainsbury, Tulip Sadiq, Louise Haigh as the Transport Secretary, of course now Peter Mandelson, Angela Rayner, you know, and the list just goes on and on. He's had that reshuffle between number 10 and number 11. There's suggestions that his chief of staff may now find himself in a slightly precarious position. It's all about who knew what when it comes to Peter Mandelson. And, you know, one of our readers actually made quite an astute remark a couple of days ago, Mike. They said if only they had one of these imaginary desks over which things never seem to pass. Keir Starmer's excuse always seems to be that it never came, that whatever the document is, whatever the brief is, he never came across it. No. Well, if that's true, and yet his aides, his officials are seeing it, why on earth aren't they passing the information on to the Prime Minister to prevent him from going out and defending people with whom undoubtedly he has maybe a close personal relationship? It's very difficult for him to tell them that their time is up. But nevertheless, he finds himself in this position where he goes out to bat for them, and then just hours later, days later, their position, for whatever reason, is untenable. Yeah. And what that means is that Keir Starmer just looks like a disarray And his position within the party, not to mention the public view of him, is becoming increasingly precarious.
Because he appears to have absolutely no authority whatsoever. I mean, the interview he gave yesterday, in which he tried to justify what he said on Wednesday at Prime Minister's Questions and why he was still sure that he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson, is ridiculous. You know, he's basically more or less saying that I knew that there were questions to be asked because I saw the questions written down that were sent to Peter Mandelson for him to answer, but he hadn't answered them by the time I did Prime Minister's Questions, so I just said that I had full confidence in him. And I mean, that's the sort of words of a madman. You don't do that, do you? I mean, you would say we're seeking urgent guidance from Peter Mandelson as to what the extent of these email conversations are. But for the moment, we are very happy with the work that he's done, or something like that. You know, you don't go, I've got full confidence in him because I haven't seen the answers, and then later that day you see the answers and go, oh dear, he's given us some rather difficult situations to deal with here. I mean, it's just incredible.
It is incredible. It defies belief, really. How could he go out and say that he has full confidence in Peter Mandelson, knowing that he doesn't have the full information? And indeed, after Peter Mandelson has himself said that worse is to come.
Right.
Now, of course, there's this political judgment just over that 48-hour period, but also, you know, questions to be asked over why it was that he felt Peter Mandelson was an appropriate appointment as US ambassador to begin with. This is somebody who was twice previously ejected from a government position, somebody who Starmer will have known enjoys hobnobbing with the rich and the famous, somebody who may well have known had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and yet he still felt that he was the right person to put in that extremely important post. And you wonder, Trump arriving today with the state visit, how it will impact their relationship, not least the fact that, of course, Mandelson's had to be sacked, so you don't have that very important figure as a liaison between the UK and the US. And the context is somewhat baffling to me, Mike, that Trump seems to be very fond of Keir Starmer. There's actually bonhomie between these two men, and I doubt very much that Keir Starmer will want to put that in any sort of jeopardy.
I think he's fond of him in the way that you're fond of a dog, you know? He knows that he can rely on him to turn up whenever he wants him to and be as obedient as he can be, because that's the only thing he knows how to do. So I think that's why Trump feels that way about him, because I think he treats him like a bit of a patsy and just kind of, you know, hands him a couple of bones every now and again to make him feel like he's done something good.
Well, I mean, that's quite possible, but let's not forget that we do have a better tariff arrangement with the US than many other countries. A Brexit dividend, you might call it,
yeah.
Mike. Starmer was able to negotiate that. It does seem as though Trump is, at least for now, in a mood to be less punitive towards the UK than he is elsewhere, not least some countries in Asia, which are really going to suffer under 50% tariffs in some instances. Of course, at the same time, we've had lectures from, well, J.D. Vance, the vice president, about issues like free speech, about mass migration, which has been quite extraordinary coming from a US administration really weighing into a foreign country's domestic affairs. So in some ways, it's slightly inconsistent, the US's approach to the UK at the moment. But nevertheless, I do feel as though the relationship between those two men, for now at least, has been quite positive, which defies many people's expectations when you consider how many members of the Labour cabinet, how many ministers in the Labour cabinet have previously said extremely rude things about Donald Trump, and some have subsequently retracted those statements. But the Orange Man, the man in the White House, is known to be quite sensitive to such criticisms, but nevertheless seems to want to maintain a good relationship with the UK.
Yeah, well, I think the man he really likes to be close to is the King. And of course that's where he's going to be spending most of his time at Windsor, and then a little bit of time at Chequers, I think, afterwards. So he flies in tonight. Are you expecting anything, you know, in terms of new announcements that, you know, might rescue Keir Starmer? I mean, he was saying he was hoping that this deal that he's doing for some of these small nuclear plants might somehow take everybody's mind off it. But I just think the papers have now got their teeth into Starmer, and I just don't think they're going to let him go.
No, I can't imagine that this state visit is really going to turn around Starmer's fortunes. It will be a distraction, but how much cut through it's going to have with the British public against a backdrop, not just of very high levels of illegal migrants coming across the channel, which is the #1 issue to many voters, but we've now got the spectre of the November budget that's looming, where we know that Rachel Reeves is going to slap yet more taxes on workers and on businesses in Britain. So everything between now and Christmas is really going to get worse. And however much Starmer may want to present himself as this grand statesman on the international stage, and Trump will perhaps allow him to do that, ultimately it's not going to take people's minds away from the very serious domestic issues, domestic crises in some instances that this administration is now facing. So, one thing that Starmer perhaps will have breathed a sigh of relief about yesterday was some of the oxygen was taken away from him by Danny Kruger's defection to reform, which I don't think anybody really saw coming. And it did turn the spotlight onto the Conservative Party and their prospects for survival at a time when we're talking about how long Starmer may himself survive.
Yes, exactly right. Annabelle, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Annabelle Denham, the Deputy Comment Editor at The Telegraph. Let's have a quick voice note from Simon.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. Just regarding Peter Mandelson, obviously, clearly a bit of a wrong, and it looks like that way with the Epstein situation. But this guy's got history. I mean, he's had to resign in the past from, it was Tony Blair's cabinet back in the day. I can't remember the ins and outs of it. He was giving these people these jobs. The Peter Mandelson's history, he ain't great. Here you go, son, you can be the ambassador, if you like, to the US. Crazy, crazy times. God, I wish we could get these lot out quicker, but another 4 years of this. Hopefully we'll still have a country left at the end of it. Cheers, mate.
I'm not sure they'll last that long, Simon. I've been saying this for a long time, you know that. But yeah, I mean, he resigned twice from Tony Blair's cabinet. Once because he got an unsecured or interest-free loan, I should say, from a fellow cabinet minister, Geoffrey Robinson, and then the second time because he got involved in getting passports for a couple of rather wealthy Indian billionaires who wanted to be British passports. He got a bit of a fast-track scenario, which was seen to be rather unlikely to be viewed well either. So he'd already been resigned twice from a government, 2 governments actually, and now he's been fired for the 3rd time. Just extraordinary stuff. Annabelle Denham just mentioned Danny Kruger there before she went away from The Telegraph. Steve Baker's here, former Conservative Minister, host of the Insurgency podcast. He's been speaking as well about what the Tories have lost by losing Danny Kruger. Let's say a very good morning to him. Good morning to you, Steve.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks very much for having me on.
Not at all. Your view of Danny Kruger's defection is quite serious, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a seismic moment. That's because of the talent, the vision, the expertise which Danny has. I mean, he's one of the few people capable of helping Reform get ready to go into government. And let's not underestimate what that challenge is. Reform will have to take absolutely brand new MPs with no parliamentary experience and put them not just into government, but into the cabinet, in order to form a government and then be high performing. That is a very, very, very big ask. And I know listeners I think they'll believe me, but having been through the process, it's difficult to convey just what a steep learning curve it is just to make a speech in the House of Commons, never mind answer questions at the dispatch box. So it's a big deal. Danny is a man with the skills and talents and experience to help them. I think he's also a big loss to the Conservative Party because he's been the intellectual leader of just the kind of ideas which have always been embodied in Reform as a party. So, that's now a loss to Kemi as well. So it's a very big moment. I think the ramifications will be felt for a long time.
I mean, as far as inexperience goes, and this is why I find it laughable when Keir Starmer talks about Reform not being experienced in government, they've made a complete dog's breakfast of running a government because so many of them have never done it before.
Well, that's absolutely true. Yeah, but I'm afraid I don't know what people make a for, but the truth is that politics and governing is very difficult, involves trade-offs you'd rather not have to make involves enormous amounts of work, both as a backbencher and as a minister. And that is not to complain, it's just to observe that it is a tidal wave of things to do, most of which have to be grasped in the very last detail. I listened to Annabelle earlier saying about why didn't things cross Keir Starmer's desk. Well, of course, his aides are actually paid to decide what he doesn't need to see. I remember a long time ago having supper with David Cameron, which was a huge privilege. And after we'd all finished eating about 9:30, I guess, he was off back to finish doing his prime ministerial box, into the night, well into the night. So, it's a steep ask to get elected to Parliament and go straight into the Cabinet. There's been talk of putting people into the Lords. That won't really wash. It might be okay for the Foreign Secretary, but it won't really wash for a whole government. So, Danny's defection means that now Nigel can call on somebody who's been at the heart of several governments, worked with David Cameron and Boris Johnson at least very closely. He knows how the system works. He knows how it needs to change.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that Nigel Farage has admitted is they don't have enough people who have that kind of level of experience, and so they're going to have to go after quite a few Tories by the looks of things. And that, of course, has its own difficulties, because quite a lot of Reform voters don't really want Tories joining Reform, but they kind of haven't really got anywhere else to go, have they?
Well, indeed. I mean, I think Reform will have to be very careful who they take at some point. But, this is a really serious problem. Who are they going to get? And one of the things I've noticed from my network of friends is that Reform are definitely trying to recruit people from business. Yeah. People with some political exposure, perhaps have wanted to be candidates in the past, but haven't won or haven't quite made it to the candidate list. And I know from my contacts that Reform at the highest levels are reaching out to people to see if they can be recruited to be candidates in seats they might win and then join the government. So I know that Nigel and Richard, they definitely are on the lookout for talent. And, I freely admit that by recruiting Danny, they have got a guy who I regard as not just a politician, but a statesman, Occasionally we've had disagreements, but we've always managed to get through them. And I've got, as people can tell, a very great deal of admiration for Danny.
I mean, does the fact that he's gone there make you reconsider possibly that whether you might do something similar?
No, because I don't really want to return to the House of Commons. I'd have to have a very, very specific reason for being back in the Commons after everything I've done in the past. I feel I've done my shift, and I've got business interests to pursue now, which I'm very proud of. And we'll come back to those now if you ask me another time. But I don't especially want to return to the House of Commons. As I say, I feel I've done my shift.
Okay.
It's one of those things, if somebody really twisted my arm, but, perhaps Danny would twist my arm, I don't know. I'll talk to him at some stage, but I'm not expecting to return to the Commons at all.
Okay. And knowing what you know about the business of government, how much trouble would you say Keir Starmer's in?
He's in a lot of trouble. I suppose where I differ with you a bit, Mike, is I think that turkeys don't vote for Christmas. I think Keir Starmer could well be out very soon, but at that large majority of Labour MPs are not likely to submit themselves to the electorate anytime soon if they can possibly credibly avoid it, or even if they can incredibly avoid it. I think that they will very strongly try to avoid going to a general election and giving up the seats they've only just won, not least because we've heard them tell journalists that they've got nothing to lose, so they're expecting not to be returned at a general election. So I think they'll keep a government going, but goodness knows who will follow Keir Starmer and whether they'd be any good. I mean, obviously, I would never join the Labour Party. I think they'll be a disaster, whoever they are. But even trying to put myself in Labour's shoes, I just don't see anyone with remotely the competence necessary to do the things that they need to do, like reform the welfare system.
Yeah, they don't seem to have a clue how to do anything. I mean, they started their one-in, one-out scenario yesterday, where we were supposed to see the first of several dozen, if not more, migrants being re-sent back to France. They tried to set one guy on a plane, and they couldn't even get that done.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? I mean, one of your callers said earlier, why aren't there right-wing human rights lawyers? It's a very good question. Why do they all engage in left-wing virtue signalling instead of being realistic? But the defence of freedom has fallen to economists for a very long time and out of the hands of lawyers, and it's a very, very great pity that they're not a bit more centre-right. But, I'm afraid the truth is with Labour, they believe things that just aren't true. And if you believe things that aren't true, of course, real life catches up with you and knocks you round the head. And that is what we're all suffering from now.
Yeah, I think so. Steve, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Steve Baker there, who is, of course, former Conservative Minister and host of the Insurgency podcast, saying he's still not quite tempted back into Parliament, not quite tempted back into reform, even though his good friend Danny Kruger has been recruited. I was joking earlier to somebody saying, I wonder when they're going to recruit Freddy Krueger, but obviously that was just a joke, just a tongue-in-cheek scenario. Let's get a voice note from Mike.
What is it with every government we have just avoiding any form of transparency? Like, how do we not know the ins and outs of the one-in, one-out deal? How do we not know who's paying and how much it costs us? Like, just tell us. And how are we supposed to operate when we can't seem to trust any member of government at this point?
That is a big problem, Mike, and you're absolutely right, because they've given us hardly any detail about this one-in, one-out scheme. The whole thing is a sort of farrago of lies, because one-in, one-out doesn't even describe what it is. As I say, I've got a piece in the Sun today which ends with the actual number, which is, as of yesterday, it was still 5,600 in, none out. Welcome to Britain in 2025. This from Maureen in Stamford. Morning, Mike. One migrant on a plane to France doesn't seem to go along with the net zero rhetoric, really, does it? And Francis from Sussex. If the MPs are claiming for their second homes, we, the government, should take the profit they make when they sell the house. Well, I've often said that, you know, because not only have they made profits with our money, but they've also charged an awful lot of things that they put in the house to us. They don't do it quite as much as they used to, but certainly it would appear that Ed Miliband is charging us his council tax, which they've just put up, because if for a second home you pay more in council tax now, and there's quite a few Labour MPs, Labour cabinet members in fact, who are doing it. Morning, Mike, says June. Councils run by the Lib Dems and the Greens house the fewest asylum seekers despite backing softer borders. They are hypocrites. And Sarah in Morden says, it will only work if the illegals don't pass Dover and instead are fingerprinted, DNA tested, told they will never be allowed to claim asylum and taken straight back to France. It will stop within weeks. Macron and Starmer know this. They don't want it to stop. They are the traffickers. They are literally the only people dealing with people in this situation. Well, I can see how you'd make that argument. And Bill in Cheshire says, deportations. I hope Donald Trump compares the number of illegals deported by Trump in the last 10 months with the number deported by the worst Prime Minister for several generations. Yeah, let's see how that all plays out. 0344 499 1000 is the number. It's coming up to 9:39. We're going to be speaking to Ralph Scholhammer next about Labour's definition of Islamophobia. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:42. Julie Hartley-Brewer here just before 10. Let's get a voice note from Darren on One In, One Out, or none.
Morning, Mike. Darren from Suffolk. Great show as ever. Mike, is it part of the government plan to gaslight us by saying it's one in, one out? Surely it's not in first. It's one out, one back in. Surely. And in this case, it is one out. And one out, 100 back in. I mean, it's ridiculous how they've called it one out, one in, and they're going to send one out. That's it. One out, one in, not one in, one out.
Yeah, it's like hokey cokey, isn't it? Well, it's actually none out. It's actually what it is, and it's thousands in. This from Alfred in Hartlepool. He says, I don't understand why the UK must take in migrants from France with completely different cultures and provide them with top-tier support when we already have people living on our streets. Shouldn't we prioritise helping our own citizens first, when the crazy lefties realise that the UK is a small, crowded island and we're already full? Sorry, when will they? I should probably say. Dave in South Gloucester. Starmer's response to the Mandelson scandal reminds me of the Morecambe and Wise sketch. We asked all the right questions and got all the right answers, but not necessarily in the right order. That could well be true. Let's talk to Ralph Schulhammer, a political scientist, because Labour's Islamophobia definition, according to campaigners, will be used to hinder the police. Angela Rayner, of course, has still got the working group working on this, on sentencing, on charges being brought. Basically, campaigners say there's already laws to protect people of various different faiths, and why do we need a definition of Islamophobia? This story still hasn't gone anywhere, hasn't gone away. Ralph, very good morning to you.
Good to see you, Mike.
Nice to see you. What's the obsession that the left have with this definition? Because, you know, we don't seem to have to worry about a definition of any other sort of faith-based problem, but why do we need this?
Well, let me be very blunt here. This is a preemptive move by the Labour Party to blackmail and threaten everybody who wants an inquiry into the rape and torture gangs, because let's be honest, this is what they are. Right. By the way, what they are, not what they were. These things, these networks still operate. And it's also an attempt to prevent any inquiry into the fact that Islamist networks have infiltrated the Labour Party. I spoke with Raj Mihal yesterday, by the way, who is a man who has done yeoman's work in uncovering the cover-up of the Labour Party regarding these torture and rape gangs. And what the Labour Party is attempting at the moment in all areas of life is a descent, in some areas at least, into a quasi-totalitarian form of government. I mean it as I say it. Like, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, Mike. What's happening in the UK is very worrisome. The only thing that gives me some comfort is that more and more British people are waking up to it. But this is a dangerous party at the moment.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the only good news, I suppose, is that the party itself, the government itself, is kind of riven with all sorts of problems, so that they can't really get anything done because they can't actually agree within their own party on what they should be doing.
No, they can't get anything done because their priority is not serving the British people. Again, let's be very blunt here. This is a problem the left has all over the West, by the way. Leftist parties, for the most part, with maybe the exception of the Social Democrats in Denmark, but they alone will not save Western civilization, have turned against their own people. Again, I'm not being hyperbolic here. Look at the policies. Who gets priority? Who gets priority in housing? Who gets priority in welfare? Who gets priority in schooling? Wherever you look, it's always people that don't hold a passport of the country that are supposed to be governed by the parties, by the left-wing parties that are in charge. You see it in Germany, you see it in the UK, you see it in the United States, you see it everywhere. And I know usually I will say, oh, no, this is just exaggeration. It's no longer exaggeration. The numbers demonstrate it.
Well, it does. I mean, when you see the way the police operate in certain situations, whether they're policing a Palestinian demonstration, a pro-Palestinian demonstration, or a demonstration, as we saw at the weekend, Unite the Kingdom, you know, they behave in a very, very different way, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, you see the same in other countries as well. I speak from a German experience, but as you know and your viewers know, I care very much about the British people for a variety of reasons. And it is heartbreaking to say that you can call for a new Holocaust, you can be a convicted rapist, and sometimes your punishment is less than saying something the government dislikes. I mean, this is very odd. And the worst part, by the way, the exception, of course, are people like yourself, is the media is almost entirely silent on this. Yeah. They are part of the problem. This is a collusion between a political and media cartel that is not just, you know, hiding the truth, if you will, but they're actively trying to undermine and blackmail people who want to tell the truth. Again, that's a very worrisome development.
Well, many of them are manipulating the truth as well.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And pretending that certain things haven't happened or other things haven't been said, or, you know, for example, the way that they were described describing the numbers at the march on Saturday, 110,000 people. Nobody in their right mind thinks that was 110,000 people, and yet that's the narrative that was coming out. That was the official figure that the police came up with. That was the official figure the BBC came up with, and everybody just reported it.
No, I can give you another example. There was a new report now published in Australia where the government also told the people that, the people that come migration is only, high-skilled labor. It's the things that the Australian labor market needs. Now we know that if you actually look at the overall migration numbers, only 12% are actually skilled workers, and the rest is, for the most part, a drag on the welfare system, with, as always, the exception of migrants from the UK and from Western and Eastern Europe. So we are being but it's not even gaslighting anymore because it's done openly, and this is what frustrates me so.
Well, we've started to get some decent figures now out of the Home Office and out of various other government departments because they're being forced to give them out, but they've hidden them for a long time about things like sexual assaults and who's committing them. Which people from which countries, how many people from foreign countries are actually on benefits, because we were always told before, no, when migrants come here, they're not on benefits, that doesn't work, doesn't happen. Well, it does happen, and there's millions and millions and millions of pounds being paid out to them every single year as a result of it. And so we are getting a bit more at the truth here, but you're right, there are still people who wish to conceal it.
Yeah, and it's not just a financial problem. People are willing, I guess, to accept, due to economic hardship, a certain cut to their, under worse circumstances, to their income, as long as they feel that everything else is working. But it's the case again, and I'm not speaking just about the UK here. If you live in a country where you feel less safe, less secure, less optimistic about the future, and then on top of it you get poorer as well. I have to be honest with you, Mike, I think we're entering pre-revolutionary territory here. And if I would be a follower of John Locke, at some point you have to say that, if the system turns tyrannical, then the people have the right to revolt. I'm, of course, not fomenting a revolution now. For the moment, revolt at the ballot box. But I think it is very important for the British people to send a very strong signal at the next elections.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen as well, and I think the two main parties are going to be very, very shocked when they see that how that actually turns out. But listen, great to talk to you, Ralph Scholhammer. Thank you very much indeed, political scientist there, on the danger of what's going on in Western Europe particularly, but also in other Western countries like the United States of America. Let's get a voice note from Paul on Peter Mandelson.
Morning, Mike. It's Paul in Burnley. Keir Starmer doesn't make decisions. What he does, in the case of Angela Rayner's sacking, he waits to let the process do his thinking on his behalf. He let the ethics committee decide. When it came to Mandelson, he waited for the procedure to happen rather than make a decision. He let the procedure do his thinking for him. And when he does, he can't. So we seem to have a Prime Minister who's a primo, a Prime Minister in name only.
Yeah, exactly right. He doesn't appear to have any authority. He doesn't appear to have any power. He doesn't appear to have any influence over his own party or even over his own cabinet. He went and asked Ed Miliband if he could move him to Department of Housing. He said, no, I want to stay at net zero, thanks. He went, all right then. So literally he can't make anybody do anything. So what's the point of him? He can't even ask Peter Mandelson some simple questions to get simple answers. He has to ask his team of ethics advisors to write some letters, to write some questions for him, and then he'll look at them when he manages to get around to answering them. It's just remarkable, isn't it? 0344 499 1000. One here from Chris in Lincoln. The number 10 back office know that Starmer is finished and they are setting him up. More will be leaked out to force Starmer to resign, and then a new person steps in. Who knows who that will be, though, but God help us. Well, we shall see. And I'll be proved right yet again, won't I? 9:51.
never wanted to carry a gun. I did carry a gun for a little while, but I didn't really want to do it routinely, and I didn't want my officers to carry it routinely because I never actually felt that they were that the risk was so great that they needed to do that. We, as you say, we've got highly trained officers in the UK. We can give them more training because there's fewer of them. But we're now in a situation where times have changed, and I think officers do feel unable to be able to protect themselves in serious situations.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 5 minutes to 10. Julie Hotler-Brew will be here taking you through all the way to 1 o'clock, of course. It is Tuesday, the 16th of September. It's a beautiful blue sky out there. Lovely day for a crossing from Calais to Dover, I would say. Probably get quite a few coming over. Will we get any going the other way? Very much doubt it. Let's hear from the Sun's political editor, Jack Elson. He spoke to me a little bit earlier and gave his assessment on the number 10 meltdown over Mandelson.
Keir Starmer knew when he stood at the dispatch box at lunchtime on Wednesday and defended Peter Mandelson and said he retained full confidence in Peter Mandelson. One, he knew, because Peter Mandelson gave an interview to my colleague Harry Cole, that Peter Mandelson himself had admitted that more embarrassing emails and correspondence between Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein would be coming out. He also knew that the Foreign Office were in possession of those emails because Bloomberg had contacted them for a right of reply. He knew that on Wednesday morning. So why on earth, before going into the House of Commons, did he not think to ask, actually, maybe I should find out the precise nature of these emails, right, bearing in mind we already know Peter Mandelson's murky relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Why did he not then go and seek the actual contents of those emails before he stood up at 12 o'clock last Wednesday and said, I'm sticking by this guy? Because now the whole thing either looks like his judgment and lack of curiosity is astounding, or his advisors have seriously let him down, although, you know, the buck stuck to the top and he can demand, like you said, to see anything that he wants, or it looks like some massive cover-up in which we're really not being told the express truth of this. And so, you know, that is, I think, really damaging. And when you make statements in the House of Commons, you have to be really careful. I know it might seem sort of trivial to everyone, but, you know, this is basically what brought down Boris Johnson, the fact that, you know, he was economical with the truth in the House of Commons. Right. And so, you know, these things have to be taken really seriously. And, you know, I think good on the Tories who are actually managing to keep this going. It seems to be sort of the only cut through they've got in recent months. Yeah. But, you know, they are actually managing to extract some answers out of the government. And, you know, likely we're going to see a minister squirm at the dispatch box today in this 3-hour emergency debate, which has been granted by the Speaker.
And there's no question about Keir Starmer's sort of inexactitude, if you want to be kind, about some of the answers he gives when he's in the Commons. I had Kemi Badenoch in here a couple of months ago, and I asked her, I said, you know, why is it that he doesn't answer questions? And she said, quite frankly, I think a lot of the time he doesn't know the answer, and other times he just wants to sort of obfuscate and not give the right answer because it's too damning against him. And when I asked her if she thought that he was a liar, she said, yeah, that's what he is. You know, and unfortunately that's his kind of, that's the heritage leading up to this moment. So he's now hiding behind the idea that, you know, because of the time difference, Peter Mandelson hadn't answered the questions that he'd been asked, and so he didn't have that information when he went into PMQs, which is unforgivable, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's incumbent on him now, if he wants to be transparent, to just release every single ounce of detail about this scandal. Bring forward the contents of what exactly you knew before you went into PMQs, what your advisors were telling you about what was in those Peter Mandelson emails.
It's incredible, isn't it? What excuses these politicians come up with. Julian Hartley-Brewis here. Very good morning.
Very good morning. I mean, I watching that interview with that little pool clip that the Prime Minister did. Again, tetchy, annoyed, but sort of like, who do you think you are to ask me questions? How dare you question my morality and my good judgment? Well, because you've shown again and again you haven't got either. Right. Everyone knew, and he knew there were some dodgy emails. Everyone knew that Peter Mandelson was still good mates with Jeffrey Epstein after he'd actually pleaded guilty, by the way, to soliciting an underage child, a 14-year-old girl, for prostitution. I'm sorry.
Also, but the funny thing is,
what's up for debate there?
Exactly.
And that wasn't just before PMQs, he knew before he appointed him.
But apparently that was okay, because it was only when he found about the emails that was suddenly beyond the pale. But it's all right to be friends with a
But this idea that Peter Mandelson's so clever and so brilliant, he's never met a billionaire he doesn't love. No. And his yacht or villa he won't go and stay on.
He's very good at finding yachts to stand around on. But he's going to make about $8 million from this company he's got, this lobbying company. So, I mean, he's got